You want to see a man break? Watch him choose between mercy and survival on the coldest night of the year. Watch him stand at iron gates while something frozen and dying begs at his feet. Watch him calculate whether kindness will cost him everything he built from blood and compromise. That's where power cracks. That's where the story starts. Not with heroes, but with men who've learned that every open door invites a knife. Stay with me through the fire and ash, because by the end you'll understand why some rescues destroy both the saved and the savior. The wind came down from the northern peaks like an executioner's blade, sharp enough to split skin. It howled through the valley where Ravenshire Castle crouched against the mountainside, all black stone and iron spikes, looking less like a noble estate and more like a clenched fist. The kind of place that didn't invite visitors, the kind that made them think twice about knocking. Duke Cedric Ravenshire stood in his study on the third floor, staring at ledgers he couldn't focus on. Numbers blurred. His head pounded from too little sleep and too much wine the night before, though he'd only had 2 glasses. These days, 2 glasses felt like drowning. He was 42 years old and felt 70, worn down by 2 decades of cleaning up other men's mistakes, while they smiled and called him loyal. The study smelled like old leather and smoke. Dark wood panels climbed the walls. A fire crackled in the hearth but barely touched the cold. He'd designed this room himself after the war. No windows on the east side where assassins might perch, reinforced doors, a hidden exit behind the bookshelf. Paranoia architecture. But he was still alive when better men weren't, so maybe paranoia was just wisdom with sharper edges. Footsteps in the corridor. Fast ones. Cedric didn't look up. If you spent 15 years expecting bad news, you learned to let it come to you rather than rushing to meet it. The door opened without a knock. That meant Garrett, his steward, and Garrett only violated protocol during emergencies. The old man stood in the doorway, breathing hard, his face pale under his white beard. He'd served the Ravenshire family for 40 years, survived 3 dukes, and Cedric had never seen him rattled. Cedric closed the ledger. "Speak. There's someone at the gates, Your Grace." "Then tell them we're not receiving visitors. It's past midnight." "I tried. She won't leave." "She?" Cedric frowned. "Then have the guards remove her." Garrett's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. "Captain Marcus tried. She collapsed before he could touch her. She's—" He stopped, searching for words. "She's half dead, Your Grace. Frozen. Starving. I don't think she's eaten in days." "Not our problem. She's wearing a pendant." Something in the steward's voice made Cedric's chest tighten. That careful tone, like a man handling a grenade. He stood slowly, his chair scraping stone. "What kind of pendant?" "Silver. Royal crest." Garrett paused, and the next words came out like a confession. "The old crest. Before the fire." The room tilted slightly. Cedric gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles going white. "You're certain?" "I served in the royal palace for 10 years before coming here, Your Grace. I dressed Princess Catherine for her coronation. I'd recognize that seal anywhere." For a long moment, neither man spoke. The fire popped. Wind screamed against the castle walls. Cedric's mind raced through possibilities, all of them bad. A royal pendant didn't just appear. Not after 18 years. Not unless someone wanted it found. "It's a fake," Cedric said flatly. "Someone's playing games." "Then why collapse at our gates specifically? Why not the capital? Why not one of the great houses?" "Because I'm far enough from court that they think I'm stupid." Cedric moved toward the door, shoving past Garrett. "Where is she now?" "Gatehouse. The guards are keeping her warm." "Keeping her warm?" Cedric spun, incredulous. "I said remove her, not adopt her." Garrett met his eyes without flinching. "She's 17, 18 at most. She weighs nothing. If we throw her out, she'll be dead before dawn." "Again, not our problem. With respect, Your Grace, if that pendant is real, it's not." "Then turning her away might be the worst decision you've ever made." Cedric stared at his steward, a man he trusted more than his own brothers, and saw genuine fear there. That scared him more than anything else tonight. Garrett didn't fear poverty or scandal or even death, but he feared this girl, or what she represented. Cedric exhaled through his teeth. "Show me." They descended 3 flights of stairs, their boots echoing in empty corridors. The castle was too big for the staff they kept. Another cost-cutting measure after the war taxes bled noble families dry. Most rooms stayed locked and dark. Cedric passed portraits of dead Ravenshears, men and women who'd ruled this valley with iron and gold, back when titles meant something beyond debt and obligation. His father stared down from the landing, stern and unforgiving in his military uniform. Duke Aldrich Ravenshire, who'd taught his son that mercy was a luxury the weak couldn't afford. Cedric hadn't spoken to him in the 5 years before his death. Hadn't cried at the funeral either. The gatehouse sat separate from the main castle, a small stone building built into the outer wall where guards could watch the road. Inside, 3 men clustered around a cot near the stove. They stepped back when Cedric entered, suddenly very interested in the floor. Captain Marcus spoke first. "Your Grace, I apologize. You thought you'd countermand my orders?" "No, sir. I thought she'd die." Cedric looked at the captain, a man who'd served under him during the border wars, who'd taken a crossbow bolt meant for Cedric's chest and never asked for more than a handshake in return. "Good men made you do stupid things. They appealed to the part of yourself you'd buried for survival." "Everyone out," Cedric said quietly. The guards filed out. Garrett lingered near the door like a ghost, but Cedric didn't send him away. Some conversations needed witnesses, even silent ones. The girl on the cot looked dead already. She lay on her side, wrapped in every spare blanket the guards owned, her face turned toward the stove. Dark hair matted with dirt and ice. Skin so pale it looked translucent, blue veins visible at her temples. Her lips had cracked and bled. She couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds. The kind of thin that came from weeks without food, the body eating itself to survive. But it was her hand that made Cedric's breath catch. She clutched the pendant even in unconsciousness, her fingers locked around it like a lifeline. Silver glinted between her knuckles. He could see enough to confirm what Garrett claimed, the royal crest of the Ashcroft dynasty, the lion and the rose, stamped in metal that was definitely silver and definitely old. Cedric knelt beside the cot, his knees protesting. Up close he could see her breathing, shallow but steady. She smelled like snow and unwashed skin and something else. Smoke, faint but unmistakable, as if she'd stood too close to a fire and it had soaked into her clothes. He reached for the pendant. Her eyes snapped open. Cedric jerked back, his hand going instinctively to where his sword should be, except he wasn't wearing one because he was in his own damned gatehouse at midnight dealing with a half-dead vagrant instead of sleeping like a sane person. The girl stared at him. Her eyes were gray, the color of winter storms. Wide and unfocused, but aware. Terrified. She tried to speak but only managed a rasping sound, her vocal cords too dry for words. "Don't move," Cedric said, not kindly. "You're in no condition to run." She didn't run. She tried to sit up, which was almost worse. Her arms shook with effort, and she made it maybe 6 inches before collapsing back onto the cot, gasping. The blankets fell away slightly, and Cedric saw she wore rags, thin summer fabric completely inadequate for winter in the mountains. Her feet were wrapped in torn cloth, blood seeping through. How far had she walked? "Water," she managed, the word barely a whisper. Garrett moved before Cedric could respond, bringing a cup from the table. He lifted her head gently. The old man had raised 6 daughters, it showed, and helped her drink. She gulped too fast and choked, water spilling down her chin, but she kept drinking until the cup was empty. "Slowly," Garrett murmured. "You'll make yourself sick." She fell back, breathing hard, staring at Cedric with those storm-colored eyes. Her free hand remained locked around the pendant. She studied him like she was trying to memorize his face, catalog every scar and hard angle, looking for something. Recognition, maybe. "What's your name?" Cedric asked. She swallowed, her throat working. "Evelyn?" "Evelyn what?" A pause. Too long. She glanced at Garrett, then back at Cedric. "Ashcroft." The name hit like a fist. Cedric stood abruptly, chair scraping stone. Garrett inhaled sharply. For several seconds, nobody moved. The stove crackled. Wind battered the gatehouse walls. "You're a liar," Cedric said. "I know what you think." Her voice was rough, damaged by cold and thirst, but it carried an unexpected steadiness. "I know how this sounds." "Do you?" Cedric stepped closer, looming over the cot. Because it sounds like a desperate con. It sounds like someone sent you here with a fake pendant and a famous name, hoping I'm stupid enough to play along. Nobody sent me. Then where did you get the pendant? I've always had it. She met his eyes without flinching, which impressed him despite himself. Most people looked away when he used his interrogation voice. I don't remember where it came from. I don't remember anything before I was 4 years old. Convenient. It's the truth. The truth is that Princess Catherine Ashcroft died in a palace fire 18 years ago. Every credible account agrees. The king, the queen, their daughter, all dead. The entire bloodline ended that night. Maybe the accounts were wrong. Cedric laughed, a harsh bark. Maybe you're insane. Your Grace, Garrett interjected carefully. Perhaps we should... Be quiet, Garrett. Cedric didn't look away from the girl. Where have you been for 18 years? A village, far north, near the border. A woman named Ela raised me. She died 6 months ago. And she told you that you were a princess? She told me I was someone else's daughter, that my parents died and she took me in. Evelyn's hand tightened around the pendant. She told me to keep this hidden. Said if anyone saw it, they'd kill me. Smart woman. When she died, I had nothing left. No family, no money, no future in that village, so I walked south. Why here? Why my gates? I didn't plan to come here. She coughed, her whole body convulsing. Garrett started forward, but Cedric waved him back. When the fit passed, Evelyn continued, her voice weaker. I followed the roads, tried to find work. Nobody would hire me. Nobody would feed me. I kept walking. This was just the first place I reached before I collapsed. Unlucky for both of us. I'm not asking you to believe me. She pushed herself up on one elbow, her face twisting with pain. I'm asking you not to kill me. Let me rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll leave. And go where? Anywhere that isn't here. Cedric studied her. Despite the dirt and exhaustion, despite the half-dead state of her body, she held herself with something that might be dignity or might be stubbornness. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. She wasn't begging, wasn't crying, just making a simple request. One night, one act of mercy that cost him nothing except the risk of everything. Because if she was telling the truth, if this broken girl really was the lost heir to a destroyed kingdom, then letting her stay meant painting a target on his back. Every noble family, every corrupt chancellor, every power-hungry bastard who'd spent 18 years carving up the kingdom would see her resurrection as a threat. They'd come for her. They'd come for him too, for harboring her. And if she was lying, then he'd be known as the fool who fell for an obvious con. His reputation, already hanging by threads after years of political neutrality, would shred completely. Lose-lose. His specialty. Garrett, Cedric said without taking his eyes off Evelyn, have someone prepare a room in the east wing. Ground floor, lock the door from the outside. Your Grace, she stays tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do with her. The east wing hasn't been opened in. I don't care if it's full of rats and ghosts. Put her somewhere she can't run. Cedric turned to the girl. You try to escape, you steal anything, you cause any problems at all, I'll throw you out myself. Understand? Evelyn nodded once, her face unreadable. Cedric headed for the door, then paused. Against every instinct he'd honed over 20 years, he turned back. That pendant. Let me see it properly. She hesitated, her fingers tightening protectively. For a moment he thought she'd refuse. Then slowly, painfully, she lifted the chain over her head and held it out. Cedric took it gently, trying not to notice how her hand shook. The pendant was heavier than he expected. Solid silver, unquestionably authentic. The crest showed clear in the firelight, a crowned lion rampant, roses twining around its legs. The Ashcroft dynasty's symbol, marking 300 years of rule. On the back, worn almost smooth, were initials. CEA, Catherine Elizabeth Ashcroft. Cedric's blood turned to ice. Where did you really get this? His voice came out raw. I told you, I've always had it. This belonged to the princess, the real princess, which means either you stole it from her grave or... He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't let himself finish it, because the alternative was impossible. The alternative meant that everything he'd believed for 18 years was a lie. That the funeral he'd attended, the mourning period he'd observed, the convenient story about tragic accidents, all theater, all misdirection. And if it was theater, someone had directed it. Garrett moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only Cedric could hear. Your Grace, you need to see something. The initials. I see them. No, sir. Look again. Below them. Cedric angled the pendant toward the light. There, scratched almost invisibly into the silver below the initials, was a second mark. A personal sigil. A small sword crossed with a rose. His sigil. The one he'd carried as a young commander 20 years ago, before he inherited the dukedom. The one he'd used to mark letters, equipment, personal effects. The one nobody should remember except those who'd served with him during the war. He'd placed this pendant around a child's neck 18 years ago in the middle of fire and screaming and blood. He'd told her to keep it hidden. He'd promised he'd come back for her. And then he'd left her in a village far north near the border, with a woman who'd asked no questions because he'd paid her enough gold to buy silence for a lifetime. The room swayed. Cedric gripped the pendant so hard the edges bit into his palm. His mind raced through the implications, each worse than the last. If this girl was the same child, and the sigil suggested she was, then she wasn't just some convenient fraud. She was his failure, his abandoned responsibility, his buried guilt walking back through his gates on the coldest night of winter, demanding answers he couldn't give without destroying everything. He looked at Eveline Ashcroft and saw the truth in her gray eyes. She didn't know what she was. Not really. She held the pieces but couldn't assemble the picture. That was the only mercy here. She didn't understand what the pendant meant, didn't recognize the man who'd saved her, and then disappeared. Not yet. Get her cleaned up, Cedric said roughly, shoving the pendant back into her hands. Feed her. Keep her away from the staff. Nobody speaks to her. Nobody asks questions. Tomorrow, we'll deal with this. He left before Garrett could argue, before the girl could ask why his hands shook, before his carefully constructed walls cracked completely. He climbed back through the castle, past the portraits and the locked rooms and the ghosts of better men, until he reached his study. He locked the door, poured himself 4 fingers of whiskey, drank it in one burning swallow. Then he poured another and sat in the dark, staring at the fire, remembering a night 18 years ago when he'd carried a screaming child through smoke and flames while the kingdom burned behind them, when he'd made a choice between doing what was right and what was survivable, and he'd chosen survival because that's what pragmatic men did. He'd told himself for years that the child was better off hidden, that revealing her would paint a target on her back, that the kingdom needed stability more than truth. He'd told himself a lot of things. None of them felt true tonight. Somewhere in his castle, locked in a room she couldn't escape, the ghost he'd tried to bury was sleeping. And come morning, he'd have to decide whether to save her again or finish what he'd started by leaving her behind. Either way, blood was coming. You didn't resurrect dead princesses without burning down what came after. The question was whether he'd burn with them or walk away one more time. Dawn came gray and unforgiving, the kind of light that exposed every crack. Cedric hadn't slept. He'd sat in his study calculating outcomes, running scenarios, trying to find one path that didn't end in disaster. By the time the sun cleared the mountains, he'd filled 6 pages with notes and crossed out every conclusion. There was a knock at the door. Soft, hesitant, not Garrett's confident rap. Come. A young maid entered, nervous, holding a tray with bread and tea. She set it on the desk without meeting his eyes. Lord Garrett asked me to tell you the girl is awake, Your Grace. Tell him I'll be there shortly. The maid curtsied and fled. Cedric watched her go, then looked at the untouched tray. He should eat, should maintain the routines that kept him sharp. But food felt wrong. Everything felt wrong, like the world had tilted overnight and he was the only one who noticed. He descended to the east wing, a section of the castle they rarely used because heating it was expensive, and the rooms smelled like mildew. Garrett waited outside a locked door, looking older than yesterday. The man had aged a decade in one night. She's been asking for you, Garrett said quietly. Keeps saying she needs to explain something. Explain what? She wouldn't tell me. Says it has to be you. Cedric took the key from his steward's hand. Anyone else know she's here? Just the 3 guards from last night. I spoke to them. They'll keep quiet. For how long? Garrett hesitated. Loyalty has a price, Your Grace. Right now, their silence is free because they owe you their positions. But if word spreads that you're harboring someone claiming to be Princess Catherine, it won't spread. Cedric unlocked the door. Because she's not claiming anything. She's a vagrant who collapsed at our gates. We helped her. Tomorrow she leaves. Do you actually believe that? Cedric didn't answer. He pushed open the door and entered the room alone. The space was small and simple. A bed, a chair, a wash basin. Someone had left clothes folded on the chair, plain servant's attire, but clean. The girl sat on the edge of the bed, wearing a nightgown, her dark hair washed and combed. Without the layers of dirt and exhaustion, she looked painfully young. 17 at most. A child playing at survival. She stood when he entered, wobbling slightly. Her feet were bandaged, he noticed. Fresh white cloth hiding the damage from her journey. You should sit, Cedric said. You're not strong enough to stand. She sat, but her eyes never left his face. That unnerving directness again, like she was reading him in a language he didn't know he spoke. Thank you for letting me stay. Don't thank me. I haven't decided what to do with you yet. Are you going to kill me? The question was so blunt it caught him off guard. What? Last night you looked at the pendant like it hurt you, like it meant something. She clutched it now, hanging again around her neck. The woman who raised me, Isla, she told me that if the wrong people found out what I carried, they'd kill me. You're powerful. You're dangerous. Maybe you're one of the wrong people. Cedric barked a laugh, surprised by her honesty. Most nobles spent their whole lives learning how to lie politely. This girl just threw the truth at him like a weapon. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have woken up. Then what do you want? Good question. What did he want? To undo the past? To go back 18 years and make different choices? To never answer the door last night? He pulled the chair close and sat, leaning forward so she couldn't look away. I want the truth, not the story you told last night. The real truth. Where did you get that pendant? I told you. You told me a convenient fairy tale. Woman finds you, raises you, dies, clean and simple. But life isn't clean and simple. So tell me what really happened. Eveline bit her lip, considering. Her fingers traced the edge of the pendant in a way that suggested years of habitual touch. I don't have memories before I was 4. Nothing clear, anyway, just impressions. Fire, screaming, someone carrying me, running. Cedric's chest tightened. Go on. I woke up in Isla's cottage. She told me I was her daughter, that my father died before I was born. I believed her for years. But when I was 12, she got sick. Really sick. She thought she was dying, and she told me the truth. Which was? That a man brought me to her in the middle of the night, paid her a fortune in gold to keep me safe and secret, told her if anyone ever asked, I was just a village girl, nothing special. Did she describe this man? Tall, dark hair, military bearing. Eveline's eyes locked onto his. She said he looked like he'd seen too many battles. Cedric forced himself not to react. That could be 1,000 soldiers. She said he marked the pendant before he left, scratched something into the silver, a personal sigil. She lifted the chain, showing him the small sword and rose. This symbol. Do you know what it means? No. The lie came easily, too easily. 2 decades of political survival had taught him how to wear falsehoods like armor. But Eveline didn't look convinced. You're lying. Careful, girl. I'm not afraid of you. She leaned forward, and suddenly the frightened vagrant was gone. In her place sat someone harder, sharper, someone who'd survived things that should have killed her. I've been hungry. I've been cold. I've walked 200 miles in winter with nothing but rags and hope. I've had men try to hurt me, to take what little I had. I've eaten scraps and slept in ditches and watched good people die for no reason. So no, Your Grace, I'm not afraid of you. You're just another powerful man who'll either help or hurt me. I've learned to handle both. Tibet, silence stretched between them. Cedric found himself reassessing. This wasn't a victim. This was a survivor. There was a difference, and the difference mattered. You want honesty? Cedric stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the valley stretched white and frozen under morning light. Fine. That pendant belonged to Princess Catherine Ashcroft, the real princess who died in a palace fire 18 years ago, which means you either stole it from her body or someone gave it to you as part of a larger con. Or I'm her. You're not. How do you know? Because I was there the night she died. The words escaped before he could stop them, years of buried guilt spilling out. I was part of the force that tried to save the royal family. We were too late. The fire had spread too far. The king died in his chambers. The queen died trying to reach her daughter. And the princess... He stopped, his throat tight. The princess burned with the rest of them. Evelyn stood slowly, crossing to where he stood. Up close he could see she was trembling, but not from fear, from rage. "You're still lying." "Excuse me?" "You said the princess burned, but you didn't see it happen. You weren't in the room. You couldn't have been, or you'd be dead too." She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. What really happened that night? Cedric could throw her off easily, should throw her off. Instead, he stood frozen, staring at this girl who saw through him with terrifying clarity. A girl who might be the worst mistake of his life or the one chance at redemption. He couldn't tell which anymore. "The truth," she whispered. "Please. I've been running from ghosts my whole life. I need to know." And there it was. The breaking point. The moment where Cedric could lie again, send her away, go back to his comfortable isolation. Or he could do what he should have done 18 years ago and face the consequences. He pulled free from her grasp and walked to the door. Locked it. When he turned back, his face had changed. The Duke's mask had fallen away, leaving something raw and human underneath. "If I tell you this, you can never repeat it, to anyone, ever. Understand?" Evelyn nodded, her eyes wide. Cedric took a breath, released it. Let the past come flooding back. "I was a commander then, young, ambitious, loyal to the crown. When the fire started, I led my men into the palace against orders, found the princess in her chambers trapped by flames. I carried her out. She was screaming, terrified, barely conscious from the smoke. Then she didn't die. She should have." His voice turned bitter. "The Chancellor, Lucian Vale, he arrived as I was bringing her out. Took one look at her and told me the princess was a liability, that the kingdom needed stability, not a child queen controlled by regents. He said if she lived, there'd be civil war, nobles fighting over who got to control her, blood in the streets for years." "So you killed her?" "I hid her." Cedric met Evelyn's eyes. "I took her far away, paid a woman to raise her in secret, and told everyone the princess died in the fire. I thought I was saving her life, saving the kingdom from tearing itself apart." "You were saving yourself." Her voice cut like glass. "You chose the easy path. I chose survival. For her and for me. And then you forgot about her." The accusation hung between them. Cedric wanted to deny it, wanted to explain that forgetting was the only way to live with what he'd done. But he'd promised truth. And truth was a bastard that didn't let you soften the edges. "Yes," he said simply. "I forgot." Evelyn stepped back, her face unreadable. For a long moment she just looked at him, this man who'd saved her and abandoned her in the same breath. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "I think you're the man who brought me to Isla." "That's impossible." "Is it? Look at me. Really look." He did. Saw past the dirt and hardship to the bone structure underneath. High cheekbones, strong jaw, gray eyes that held storms. She looked nothing like the child he'd carried. But children changed. 18 years turned babies into adults, softness into angles. But there was something else. A presence. A way of holding herself despite everything that suggested breeding, nobility, blood. You couldn't fake that. Either you were born to command or you weren't. "Even if you are her," Cedric said quietly, "it doesn't matter. That life is gone. The kingdom has moved on. You'd be a ghost trying to haunt a house that's been demolished. Then why did you keep the sigil on the pendant?" "I didn't—" He stopped. She was right. He could have destroyed it, should have destroyed it, but some part of him wanted a way back. A thread connecting past to present, just in case. Just in case what? In case his conscience finally caught up with his pragmatism? In case the abandoned princess came back demanding answers? "What do you want from me?" he asked, suddenly exhausted. "I want you to tell me who I am, not who you think I should be, not who's convenient for the kingdom, who I really am." "I don't know." "Then find out." She crossed her arms defiant. "You're the Duke of Ravenshire. You have resources, connections, access to records. If I'm really Princess Catherine Ashcroft, there must be proof. Birth records, portraits, something that proves I existed. Those records were destroyed in the fire. All of them? Cedric hesitated. The truth was that he'd never checked. He'd taken Lucien's word that the evidence was gone, that the past was safely buried. But Lucien had lied about other things. Maybe he'd lied about this too. "I'll make you a deal," Cedric said finally. "Give me 3 days. I'll investigate quietly. See what I can find. If there's proof you're the princess, I'll figure something out. If there's not, you leave Ravenshire and never come back. And if you find proof, then we'll deal with that problem when it arrives." Evelyn considered, then nodded. 3 days. You stay in this room. Don't speak to anyone. Don't draw attention. The moment people know you're here claiming royal blood, we're both dead. I understand. Cedric moved to the door, then paused. Against every instinct, he turned back. That night, in the fire, did Isla ever tell you what the child said? She said I kept crying for my mother. Not just your mother. You said a name, over and over. He stopped, the memory sharp after 18 years. You said, "Don't let the shadows take me," like you knew something was coming, like you were afraid of more than just the fire. Evelyn's face went pale. The shadows? What does that mean? I have nightmares every night since I can remember. I am running through fire and there are shadows behind me, reaching, trying to pull me back. She wrapped her arms around herself. I always wake up before they catch me. Cedric felt ice in his veins. How long have you had these dreams? As long as I can remember. Isla said they'd go away. They never did. Christ. Cedric ran a hand through his hair. The fire wasn't an accident. Everyone knew that. But nobody knew who started it. If you were having nightmares about shadows, you think I saw something. I think you might be the only person alive who knows what really happened that night. And if you are, then every person involved in the massacre will want you dead before you remember. The implications settled over them like ash. If Evelyn was Catherine Ashcroft, she wasn't just a lost princess. She was a witness, a threat. And bringing her back into the light would paint a target visible from every corner of the kingdom. I should send you away, Cedric said quietly, right now, before this gets worse. But you won't. Why wouldn't I? Because you're still guilty. Evelyn moved closer, her voice soft but relentless. You abandoned a child. You've lived with that for 18 years, and now that child is standing in front of you, giving you a chance to make it right. You won't walk away again. She was right. God help him, she was right. Cedric had spent 2 decades building walls around his conscience, and this girl had torn through them in less than a day. 3 days, he repeated. After that, we make a choice. He left before she could respond, locking the door behind him. Garrett waited in the hall, reading the storm on Cedric's face. Problems, Your Grace? Problems don't cover it. Cedric started walking, his mind already racing through contacts, archives, people who owed him favors. I need you to send messages, quietly. Use couriers we trust. To whom? Start with Master Aldwin at the Royal Archives. Tell him I need records from 18 years ago. Anything relating to Princess Catherine Ashcroft. Birth certificates, portraits, medical records. I don't care how buried they are. The archives were destroyed, sir. Parts of them, not all. Aldwin's a pack rat. If anyone saved copies, it's him. Garrett nodded, making mental notes. Who else? Captain Helena Crane. She served in the Royal Guard before the fire. If anyone remembers what the princess looked like, it's her. She retired to the coast. Then we'll find her on the coast. Next, I need to speak with Lucien Vale. Garrett's hand stopped mid-movement. The Chancellor? Your Grace, he's dangerous, corrupt, probably involved in the massacre. Cedric's jaw set. Which means he knows things, and I need to know what he knows. Approaching him directly is suicide. Then I'll be indirect, but I need information, and he's drowning in it. They reached Cedric's study. Inside, morning light cut through the windows like accusations. He moved to his desk, pulling out paper and ink. His hand shook slightly as he wrote. Not from fear, Cedric had stopped being afraid of death years ago. From something worse. Hope, maybe. or the terror that came from realizing you might have to become the man you always pretended to be. Garrett, he said without looking up, if this goes badly, if I'm discovered harboring a claimant to the throne, I'll need you to get her out. Where would I take her? Far. The merchant cities, maybe. Somewhere beyond Lucien's reach. You're talking about treason, Your Grace. I'm talking about paying a debt. Cedric signed the letter, sealed it with wax. 18 years overdue. Garrett took the letter, holding it like it might explode. You really think she's the princess? I think she might be, and I think if she is, we're all about to drown in blood. Then why not send her away now, before it's too late? Cedric looked at his steward, this man who'd served faithfully through wars and scandals and the slow decay of noble purpose. Because sending her away once made me a coward, doing it twice would make me a monster, and I'm not ready to be a monster yet. Garrett nodded slowly, understanding in his old eyes. For what it's worth, Your Grace, I think you're doing the right thing. The right thing will probably get us all killed. Most right things do. The steward left with the letters. Cedric sat alone in his study, staring at the fire, remembering a night 18 years ago when he'd chosen pragmatism over principle, when he'd told himself that hiding a child was mercy, not abandonment, when he'd walked away from fire and screaming and let the world believe a convenient lie. Now the lie was coming back. And Cedric had 3 days to decide whether to face it or bury it again. Outside his window, storm clouds gathered over the valley. Snow was coming, the kind that buried roads and trapped travelers and turned the world white and silent. Perfect weather for ghosts. He poured himself whiskey he didn't drink and waited for the hammer to fall. Because it would fall. These things always did. You didn't resurrect dead princesses without someone noticing, and when they noticed, they'd come. The first letter arrived on the second day. Cedric found it on his desk after breakfast, sealed with unmarked wax. No courier had knocked. No servant had delivered it. Someone had walked into his private study and left it there while he slept, which meant his castle was either compromised or he was losing his mind. Both options felt equally likely. He broke the seal with his knife. Inside one sentence, an elegant script. The dead should stay buried, Your Grace. No signature. No threat beyond the words themselves. But the message was clear enough. Someone knew about Eveline. Someone was watching, and they wanted him to understand that keeping her alive was a choice with consequences. Cedric burned the letter in the fireplace and watched the paper curl black. Then he went to find Garrett. His steward was in the kitchens overseeing provisions, a task usually handled by the cook, but Garrett insisted on checking supplies himself ever since the war, when half the noble houses discovered their servants were selling food stores to the enemy. Trust nobody. Cedric had learned that lesson young. Garrett saw his face and dismissed the cook with a gesture. They waited until the woman left, then Cedric showed him the ashes still warm in his palm. Someone's inside the castle, Cedric said quietly. They walked past the guards, past the locks, left a threat on my desk. Garrett's expression didn't change, but his hand moved instinctively to the knife at his belt. How many people know about the girl? You, me, 3 guards? That's it. Then one of them talked. Or someone saw her arrive and put pieces together. Cedric brushed the ash from his hand. Either way, we have a problem. How many staff do we have right now? 23 in total. Kitchen, cleaning, stable hands, groundskeepers. Cut that in half. Anyone hired in the last year goes. Pay them severance, make up an excuse about winter costs. I want only people you'd trust with your life. That's extreme, Your Grace. Extreme is finding a knife in my ribs because I was polite about security. Cedric moved toward the door. Do it today. And double the guard on the east wing. Nobody gets near that room without clearance from you or me directly. What about the girl herself? Does she know someone's watching? Not yet. And she doesn't need to. Fear makes people do stupid things. Garrett nodded, but his face carried doubt. With respect, sir, keeping her in the dark might be worse. If she knows the danger, she'll be careful. If she doesn't, she might do something that gets you both killed. The old man was right, which irritated Cedric because being right meant having another conversation he didn't want to have. He'd spent the last day avoiding Eveline's room, sending meals through servants, pretending she didn't exist. Easier that way. Less complicated. But complications didn't care whether you acknowledged them or not. Fine, Cedric said. I'll talk to her. But first I need responses from my contacts. Anything from the archives yet? Master Aldwin sent word this morning. He's searching, but says most records from that period are gone. Fire damaged the royal wing, and what survived was moved to secure storage. He needs more time. How much time? A week, maybe more. We don't have a week. Cedric felt the walls closing in, time compressing. Someone knows she's here. That means we're already on a clock. If Aldwin can't find proof in 3 days, we move to other sources. Such as Captain Helena Crane, the guard who served the royal family. She saw the princess up close, daily. If anyone can identify Eveline on sight, it's her. She's 2 days' ride away on the coast. Then send a fast rider. Offer her double her pension if she comes immediately. Tell her it's a matter of royal security. She'll understand what that means. Garrett made notes on a scrap of paper, his handwriting tight and precise. And the Chancellor? Any word from Lucian Vale? Nothing. Which is either good or very bad. Assume bad, Your Grace. Men like Vale don't stay quiet when someone threatens their power. If he knows about the girl, he doesn't. Cedric said it with more confidence than he felt. Vale's in the capital playing politics. He's got bigger concerns than what happens in my castle. Unless the bigger concern is a resurrected princess. Cedric didn't respond to that because there was nothing to say. Garrett was right again. If Lucian Vale discovered that Catherine Ashcroft might be alive, he'd move heaven and earth to bury her permanently. The man had spent 18 years consolidating power in the vacuum left by the royal family's death. A living heir would unravel everything. The question was how long before he found out. Cedric left the kitchens and climbed to the east wing. 2 guards stood outside Eveline's door now, instead of 1, both men he'd served with during the border campaigns. They nodded as he approached but didn't speak. Good soldiers knew when silence was tactical. He unlocked the door and entered without knocking. Eveline sat at the small table near the window, reading a book someone had brought her. She looked up when he entered, her gray eyes sharp and alert, despite 2 days of confinement. She'd gained a little color, the deathly pallor replaced by something closer to human. Food and rest did that, made corpses into people again. "We need to talk," Cedric said, locking the door behind him. She set the book aside. "About what?" "About the fact that someone knows you're here, and they want you gone." Her face went still, the kind of stillness that came from practice controlling fear. "Who?" "I don't know yet. Someone with access to my castle. Someone willing to threaten a duke. That narrows the list, but not enough." "What did they say?" "That the dead should stay buried." Cedric pulled the chair across from her and sat, leaning back but keeping his hands visible. Non-threatening posture, but positioned so he could move fast if needed. "Old habits. Someone walked into my study last night and left a message. No signature, no indication of who they work for. Just a warning." Eveline absorbed this without visible reaction. "Are you going to listen?" The question caught him off guard. Most people would have panicked or begged or tried to negotiate. She just asked if he'd fold, like she was already calculating her next move if he did. "I haven't decided," Cedric admitted. "The smart play is to put you on a horse tonight and send you far away. Let you be someone else's problem, but you won't do that." "How do you know?" "Because you're still looking for proof." She gestured at him, at the tension in his shoulders. "If you decided to abandon me, you wouldn't be here explaining the danger. You'd just make me disappear." She was reading him again, peeling back layers he'd spent years building. It should have angered him. Instead, he felt something uncomfortably close to respect. "You're very confident for someone locked in a room," Cedric said. "I've been locked in rooms before. They don't scare me as much as they should." The comment hung there, casual but weighted. Cedric wondered what kind of life left a 17-year-old girl that comfortable with confinement. What kind of survival required that specific skill set? "I've sent for someone who knew the princess," he said, changing direction. "Captain Helena Crane. She served the royal family directly. If you're Catherine Ashcroft, she'll recognize you. And if she doesn't, then you're not who you think you are, and this conversation ends." Eveline's fingers traced the edge of her pendant. "What if I am her, but she doesn't remember? It's been 18 years. Children change, faces change, bone structure doesn't. Helena will know." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the coming days pressing down. Outside the window, snow had started falling again, thick and heavy. The valley would be impassable soon. Winter locked things in place, froze time, made escape impossible. Cedric wondered if that was mercy or cruelty. "Why did you do it?" Evelyn asked suddenly. "Why did you save me that night?" The question struck like a blade between ribs. Cedric's first instinct was to deflect, to give some noble-sounding answer about duty or honor. But he'd promised truth, and truth was the only currency that mattered now. "Because I was young and stupid," he said flatly. "Because I thought saving a child made me a hero. Because I didn't understand that sometimes death is kinder than survival. You regret it, every day for 18 years. The honesty seemed to surprise her. She leaned forward, searching his face. "Then why keep me alive? Why not finish what the fire started? Because killing children wasn't in my skill set." Cedric met her eyes without flinching. "I was a soldier, not a murderer. There's a difference, even if it's a small one." "Is there? You hid me away. Let me grow up thinking I was nobody. That sounds like murder, just slower." The accusation landed clean. No deflection possible. She was right. What he'd done was a kind of death, taking a princess and turning her into a ghost, erasing her identity, her future, her purpose. Maybe a knife would have been kinder. "I made the best choice I could with the information I had," Cedric said carefully. The kingdom was falling apart. Nobles were murdering each other over scraps of power. A child queen would have been a figurehead for whoever got to her first. She would have been used, manipulated, probably killed anyway once she was no longer useful. "So you made the decision for her." "I made the decision for everyone, including myself." Evelyn sat back, her expression unreadable. "You said the Chancellor told you to hide me. Lucian Vale, he's still in power, isn't he? He runs the kingdom in everything but name. The king who replaced the Ashcrofts is a puppet. Lucien pulls the strings, and if I came back, if I proved who I was, Lucian would have you killed before you could take 3 steps toward the throne." Cedric said it without hesitation. He'd burn the entire capital to keep his power. You're not a threat he'd negotiate with. You're a problem he'd solve permanently. Then why are we doing this? Why look for proof if it just gets me killed? Because you asked me to. And because I owe you the truth, even if the truth is dangerous. She considered that, her fingers still worrying the pendant. You think I should run, disappear again, live as someone else. I think you should survive. Whether that means running or staying or something else, I can't say. But survival is the goal. Everything else is secondary. Even justice? Especially justice. Justice gets you killed. Survival gets you tomorrow. Evelyn's mouth twisted, something between a smile and a grimace. You sound like Isla. She used to say the same thing. Keep your head down. Don't draw attention. Survive first. Live second. Was she right? Most days. But surviving isn't the same as living, is it? It's just existing. Waiting for permission to be real. The observation cut deeper than it should have. Cedric had spent 20 years surviving, playing politics, managing alliances, keeping his head above water while better men drowned. He'd convinced himself it was enough. That existence was victory. Now a 17-year-old girl was calling it what it was, cowardice dressed up as pragmatism. Helena Crane will be here in 2 days, Cedric said, standing. Until then, you stay in this room. You speak to no one. You don't go near the windows. Someone is watching, and I won't give them an easy target. And after Helena arrives, after she confirms or denies who I am, we'll deal with that then. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He moved toward the door, but Evelyn's voice stopped him. Cedric. He turned. She'd stood, and in the gray light from the window, she looked older than 17. Looked like someone who'd carried weight her whole life and was tired of pretending it didn't hurt. Thank you, she said quietly, for not sending me away, for trying. The gratitude felt wrong, unearned. He'd abandoned her once and was only halfway committed to not doing it again, but he nodded because rejecting thanks was worse than accepting it under false pretenses. Don't thank me yet. This might still end badly for both of us. I know, but at least we'll end it honestly. Cedric left before he could respond to that, locked the door, told the guards to double-check everyone who approached. Then he returned to his study and poured whiskey. He did drink this time because the weight of good intentions was crushing him, and alcohol was cheaper than integrity. He was halfway through the glass when Garrett knocked and entered without waiting for permission. Your Grace, we have a problem. Cedric set down the glass. Define problem. Lord Marcus Blackwood is here. Says he needs to speak with you urgently. He brought an armed escort. Cedric's blood went cold. Marcus Blackwood was one of the most powerful nobles in the kingdom, a man who'd prospered under Lucian Vale's rule by being ruthless enough to survive and smart enough to stay useful. He was also notoriously well-informed. If Marcus was here, it meant someone had talked. How many men? 10. Heavily armed. He's waiting in the main hall. Tell him I'll be down shortly. And Garrett? Make sure the east wing stays locked, no matter what happens. The steward's face showed understanding. If it comes to violence, it won't. Marcus is a politician, not a soldier. He's here to probe, not to fight, but keep men ready just in case. Garrett left. Cedric straightened his clothes, checked his appearance in the mirror. The face staring back looked older than 42. Looked like someone who'd made too many compromises and was running out of lies to justify them. He went downstairs to meet his enemy. Lord Marcus Blackwood stood in the main hall examining a tapestry like he owned the place. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and thick through the middle, with a face that seemed designed for smiling but rarely did. His clothes were expensive, tailored coat, polished boots, gold rings on 3 fingers. The kind of wealth that came from other people's suffering. His 10 guards spread out along the walls, hands resting casually on sword hilts. Not aggressive, just present. A reminder that violence was always an option. Marcus, Cedric said, descending the stairs. This is unexpected. Lord Blackwood turned, his expression pleasant. Cedric, good to see you. Sorry for the late visit, but I was passing through the valley and thought I'd stop by. We don't talk enough. We don't talk at all. Marcus laughed, a booming sound that echoed off stone. Fair point. I've been neglectful. But business keeps me busy, you understand. I'm sure it does. Cedric reached the bottom of the stairs, keeping distance between them. What brings you to Ravenshire? Concern, mostly. There are rumors floating around court. Troubling ones. About? About you harboring someone unusual, someone claiming royal blood. The accusation dropped like a stone in water, sending ripples through the silence. Cedric's face remained neutral, but inside his mind raced. 2 days. Someone had gotten word to the capital and back in 2 days. That meant professional couriers, expensive ones. This wasn't casual gossip. This was organized. Rumors are cheap, Cedric said evenly, especially in winter when people have nothing better to do than invent drama. True, but these rumors came from reliable sources, people who've served your house for years. Then they're lying to you. I haven't harbored anyone. Marcus stepped closer, his smile never wavering. Come now, Cedric. We're both adults. You don't have to play games. If you found someone claiming to be Princess Catherine, the kingdom needs to know. Why? So Lucian Vale can have her killed before breakfast? The smile flickered. Now that's an interesting accusation. What makes you think the Chancellor would harm a member of the royal family? Because he killed the last one. Everyone knows it. They're just too afraid to say it out loud. Careful, Cedric. Slander against the Chancellor is treason. Truth isn't slander. They stared at each other, the pretense of civility evaporating. Marcus's guards tensed, hands tightening on weapons. Cedric's men appeared in doorways, crossbows held low but ready. The hall filled with the promise of violence. Then Marcus laughed again, breaking the tension like glass. You always were direct. I appreciate that, even when it's inconvenient. I'm not interested in your appreciation. State your business or leave. My business is simple. If you're harboring someone claiming royal blood, hand them over. The kingdom will conduct a proper investigation, determine the truth. If they're legitimate, they'll be protected. If they're a fraud, they'll face justice. Justice meaning a quick death in a cell somewhere. Justice meaning due process. Cedric shook his head. I don't have anyone here. Your sources are wrong. Then you won't mind if I look around, just to ease concerns. I mind very much. This is my home, not a public inn. You don't have authority to search without cause. I have the Chancellor's authority. That's cause enough. Marcus pulled a sealed document from his coat, showing the wax seal of Lucian Vale's office. Cedric recognized it immediately, an official warrant, granting Marcus the right to search any property suspected of harboring fugitives or traitors. It was a trap. Either Cedric refused and confirmed he had something to hide, or he allowed the search, and they'd find Eveline within the hour. The warrant's specific to fugitives, Cedric said, reading it quickly. I'm not hiding fugitives. Anyone claiming false royal blood is a fugitive by definition. Now, will you cooperate, or do we do this the hard way? Cedric's mind raced through options, all of them bad. Fighting would mean open war with the Chancellor's faction. Surrendering Evelyn meant her death. There had to be a third path, something that bought time. Fine, he said slowly. Search the castle. But your men go room by room with my steward supervising. And you stay here with me. I won't have you planting evidence while pretending to investigate. Marcus considered, then nodded. Fair enough. Though I'm hurt you don't trust me. I don't trust anyone who shows up with 10 armed men and a warrant. Wise policy. Garrett appeared, and Cedric gave him a look that communicated everything without words. The steward nodded imperceptibly, understanding. He'd lead Marcus's men on a search that took hours, checking every room except the east wing until Cedric could move Evelyn somewhere safer. Shall we have tea while we wait? Marcus asked pleasantly. I'd rather drink poison. That can be arranged. They moved to the drawing room, a space designed for formal entertaining that Cedric rarely used. Marcus settled into a chair like he belonged there, comfortable and confident. His men had left with Garrett, but the threat remained. This wasn't over. You're making a mistake, Marcus said conversationally. Protecting her. I'm not protecting anyone. You're a terrible liar, Cedric. Always have been. It's one of your few redeeming qualities. Then why did you come here? If you know I have her, why not just take her by force? Because I'm hoping you'll be smart. The Chancellor wants this resolved quietly. A trial, an execution, the whole thing handled privately. No public spectacle, no martyrs. But if you make this difficult, it becomes public. And public means messy. People ask questions. Investigate. Suddenly everyone's wondering about that night 18 years ago. Let them wonder. You don't want that? Marcus leaned forward, dropping the pleasant mask. Trust me, Cedric. You don't want people digging into the fire. There are bodies buried there. Important ones. And if they get exposed, a lot of powerful people will be very unhappy, including you. The threat was clear. Cedric was implicated in the cover-up, had been part of the machinery that buried the truth. If that came to light, his reputation, his position, maybe his life would end. Marcus was offering him an out, sacrifice the girl, save himself. It was the same choice he'd made 18 years ago, and it felt just as wrong now as it did then. What happens if I refuse? Cedric asked. Then we take her by force. And you? Conspiracy to commit treason, harboring a fugitive, obstruction of royal justice. Pick your charge. You'll hang the same regardless. Cedric laughed, surprising himself. It felt good, breaking the tension. You're threatening to hang a duke for showing mercy to a starving girl? I'm threatening to hang a traitor for supporting a false heir, except you don't know if she's false. That's the problem. You're so afraid she might be real that you're willing to kill her without investigating. That's not justice, Marcus. That's murder. Call it what you want. The result's the same. They fell silent, the weight of inevitability pressing down. Cedric could hear his guards moving in distant corridors, could hear Marcus's men conducting their search. The clock was ticking. Soon they'd reach the east wing. Soon the choice would be made for him, unless he acted first. Cedric stood abruptly. I need to check something. Wait here. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's not how this works. I'm not running. I just need to verify a detail before your men tear my castle apart. Give me 5 minutes. 3. Cedric left without arguing. He moved quickly through the corridors, using side passages servants used to avoid the main halls. He reached the east wing ahead of the search party, found the guards still stationed outside Evelyn's door. He unlocked it and entered fast. Evelyn was standing by the window watching snow fall. She turned when he entered, reading his urgency immediately. They're here, Cedric said. Noble from the capital with a warrant to search the castle. We have maybe 10 minutes before they find you. So what do? We move you. There's a passage behind the north fireplace in the library. Leads to the old wine cellar. It's not on any maps. You can hide there until they leave. And if they don't leave, then we have bigger problems. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door, but she resisted, stopped him with surprising strength. No, she said firmly. Cedric turned, incredulous. No? I'm done hiding, done running. If they want me, let them take me. That's suicide. Maybe. But at least it's honest. She met his eyes, something hard and bright burning there. You keep telling me to survive, but surviving isn't enough anymore. I need to know who I am, even if knowing gets me killed. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also tired of being a ghost. So either help me face them or get out of my way. Cedric stared at this girl, this impossible, stubborn fool, and saw something he'd lost decades ago reflected back at him. Conviction. Purpose. The willingness to burn rather than bend. It terrified him. It also made him respect her more than anyone he'd met in years. Fine, he said roughly. Then we do this smart. You don't say you're the princess. You don't confirm anything. You're a vagrant I helped out of mercy. Nothing more. Understand? And when they ask about the pendant, tell them it was your mother's. You don't know where she got it. Keep the story simple, consistent. Give them nothing they can use against you. Evelyn nodded, her jaw set. Okay, and if they try to take you by force, you run. Don't fight, don't argue. Just run for the North Passage and don't stop until you're in the cellar. I'll handle the rest. You'll fight for me? I'll try not to. But yes, why? The question shouldn't have been hard to answer, but standing there, staring at this girl who'd upended his entire carefully constructed life in 3 days, Cedric couldn't find the words. Why was he risking everything? Why did it matter? Because I'm tired of being a coward, he said finally, and you're giving me a chance to be something else. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Heavy boots, multiple people. The search party had reached the east wing. Cedric positioned himself between Evelyn and the door, straightened his shoulders, prepared for the confrontation that would either save them both or destroy everything. The door burst open. Garrett stood there, his face pale, with 3 of Marcus's guards behind him. They saw Evelyn immediately, saw the pendant around her neck catching firelight, saw the gray eyes and the bone structure and the impossible suggestion of royal blood. One of the guards reached for his sword. Cedric's hand shot out, gripping the man's wrist before the blade cleared its sheath. His voice came out cold and deadly. Touch your weapon in my home without permission, and I'll have you in chains before sunset. The guard froze. Behind him, his companions hesitated, unsure. Garrett looked at Cedric with something like horror, understanding that this moment would define everything that came after. Marcus Blackwood appeared in the doorway, pushing past his men. He took one look at Evelyn and smiled, a predator's expression. Well, he said softly, isn't this interesting? Marcus Blackwood stepped into the room like he owned it, his eyes moving from Evelyn to Cedric with the calculation of a man who'd just won a bet he'd placed years ago. Behind him, his guards filled the doorway, hands on weapons, waiting for the order that would turn this from conversation to violence. Well, Marcus said again, softer this time. The lost princess. Right here in Duke Ravenshire's private chambers. How convenient. She's not the princess, Cedric said flatly. She's a vagrant I took in during the storm. Nothing more. Marcus moved closer to Evelyn, studying her face with the intensity of a jeweler examining a suspicious stone. She held his gaze without flinching, her hand wrapped around the pendant at her throat. The gray eyes caught the firelight, and Cedric saw the moment Marcus recognized something in them. A flicker of doubt. Or worse, certainty. A vagrant wearing royal silver, Marcus murmured, with the bone structure of Catherine Ashcroft. What remarkable coincidence. The pendant was her mother's. She doesn't know where it came from. Is that so? Marcus reached out slowly, his thick fingers moving toward the pendant. Let me see it. Evelyn jerked back, her free hand coming up defensive. Don't touch me. Marcus's smile widened. Spirited. Catherine was spirited too, from what I remember. Always arguing with tutors, refusing to sit still during state functions. Her mother used to joke that ruling the kingdom would be easier than ruling her daughter. The detail landed like a knife. Too specific to be invention. Marcus had been close to the royal family before the fire. Close enough to remember personal anecdotes. Close enough to recognize the princess if she stood in front of him. Cedric's hand moved to his belt, where a knife should be, but wasn't because he'd stopped carrying weapons in his own castle years ago. Stupid. Complacent. He'd gotten soft. Marcus saw the movement and laughed. Relax, Cedric. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to bring the girl to the capital for proper investigation. If she's innocent, she has nothing to fear. Your definition of investigation ends with a noose. Only if she's guilty. Marcus turned back to Evelyn, his voice taking on a false gentleness that made Cedric's skin crawl. Child, I understand you're frightened. But Duke Ravenshire has filled your head with lies. The kingdom isn't your enemy. Chancellor Vale wants only to discover the truth. If you're truly Princess Catherine, you'll be restored to your rightful place, protected, honored. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm afraid that's not your decision. It's mine. Cedric stepped between them, his voice dropping to the register he'd used commanding troops during the war. The tone that meant orders weren't suggestions. She stays here until proper authorities arrive. Not your thugs. Real investigators. I am real authority. Marcus pulled the warrant again, showing the Chancellor's seal. This document gives me the right to detain anyone suspected of treason or fraud. That includes her. And you, if you interfere. Then detain me. But she doesn't leave this castle. They stared at each other, the air thick with the promise of violence. Cedric could feel his men in the corridors, could sense them moving into position. Marcus's guards tensed, reading the shift. One wrong word and blood would paint these walls. Garrett spoke from the doorway, his voice carefully neutral. Your Grace, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Away from the girl. There's nothing to discuss. With respect, sir, there's everything to discuss. Garrett's eyes carried a message Cedric couldn't quite read. Something urgent. Please. Marcus gestured magnanimously. By all means, take your time. My men will watch the girl while you two talk. Cedric looked at Evelyn. Her face showed fear now, the mask cracking. But underneath the fear was something harder. Determination. She gave him the smallest nod. Go. I'll be fine. He wanted to argue, to refuse to leave her alone with Marcus's men. But Garrett's expression suggested whatever he had to say was critical. Cedric followed his steward into the corridor, leaving two of his own guards inside the room with strict orders to prevent anyone from touching Evelyn. They walked to the end of the hall, out of earshot. Garrett's face had gone gray, his hands shaking slightly. In 40 years, Cedric had never seen him shake. Tell me, Cedric said quietly. Captain Helena Crane arrived an hour ago. She's waiting in your study. That's good news. She can identify... She already knows, Your Grace. Garrett's voice cracked. About the girl. About who she might be. Marcus sent a rider ahead of his own arrival. Helena received a message from the Chancellor's office before she even reached the castle gates. Saying what? That if she confirms the girl's identity as Princess Catherine, her entire family will be executed for treason. Her children, her grandchildren, everyone. Cedric felt the floor tilt. How? The Chancellor has been watching you for months, maybe longer. He knew you'd reach out to Helena eventually. So he got to her first. Threatened everyone she loves unless she cooperates. Cooperates how? By testifying that the girl is a fraud, no matter what she actually sees, no matter what she actually believes. Garrett's voice dropped to a whisper. He's already won, sir. If Helena confirms Evelyn is the princess, her family dies. If she denies it, we have no proof. Either way, Marcus takes the girl, and we never see her again. The trap closed around Cedric with perfect precision. Lucien Vale had predicted every move, anticipated every strategy. He'd turned their only credible witness into a weapon against them. And he'd done it so efficiently that Cedric felt a sick kind of admiration beneath the rage. Where is Helena now? Your study. Under guard. Marcus's guard. Christ. Cedric ran his hand through his hair, mind racing. Is there anyone else? Anyone who knew the princess well enough to identify her? Not that we could reach in time. And even if we could, the Chancellor would just threaten them too. He has unlimited resources, Your Grace. We have a castle and good intentions. Good intentions? Cedric almost laughed. The road to failure was paved with those. He'd spent 20 years trying to be clever, trying to play politics like the nobles in the capital. But he wasn't clever. He was just a soldier who'd outlived his purpose, pretending expertise he didn't have. What do you recommend? He asked, because Garrett had always been smarter about these things. Give her to Marcus. Save yourself. The steward said it without judgment, just stating the tactical reality. You can't win this fight, sir. The Chancellor controls the kingdom. He controls the courts. He controls the narrative. Fighting him means death. Not just for you, for everyone in this castle. So we sacrifice her. We acknowledge reality. Reality. The word tasted like ash. Reality was that Cedric had saved a child 18 years ago and abandoned her. Reality was that he'd gotten one chance to make it right, and he was failing again. Reality was that powerful men always won, and decent ones always died, and nothing ever really changed. "No," Cedric said quietly. Garrett blinked. "Your Grace?" I said no. "We don't give her to Marcus. We don't sacrifice her to save ourselves. We find another way. There is no other way. Then we make one. That's suicide." "Probably." Cedric met his steward's eyes, seeing the fear there, the loyalty, the desperate hope that his duke would be reasonable. But Cedric was done being reasonable. Reason had gotten him here. Reason had made him a coward. Maybe it was time to be something else. "Go to Helena," he said. "Tell her I need 5 minutes of her time. Private conversation, no guards. Can you arrange that?" Marcus's men won't allow it. Marcus's men work for gold, not loyalty. Offer them enough, and they'll look the other way. We've got to have something in the treasury worth their greed. "Your Grace, even if we buy 5 minutes, what will you say to her? Her family is still hostage. Nothing you offer can compete with that." "I know, but I need to talk to her anyway, human to human. Not duke to captain, just people." Garrett studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll try." "But, sir, you need to understand something. If this goes wrong, if Marcus realizes we're undermining him, he'll take everyone. You, me, Evelyn, Helena, every servant in this castle. The Chancellor doesn't leave loose ends." "I know." "And you're willing to risk all those lives?" The question hung heavy. Was he? Was his guilt worth the lives of innocent people? Was trying to save one girl worth condemning dozens? The answer should have been no. Tactically, strategically, morally, the math was clear. Save the many, sacrifice the few. But Cedric had done that calculation before, had saved himself and the kingdom by hiding a princess. And it had hollowed him out, turned him into something that looked like a man but felt like a corpse walking. He couldn't do it again. "I'm willing to try," Cedric said finally, "and if it fails, if people die, that's on me. Not them. Me." Garrett's face softened slightly. "That's not how blame works, Your Grace. It's how I need it to work." The steward left to find Helena. Cedric stood alone in the corridor, listening to muffled voices from Evelyn's room, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down. He thought about his father, the stern man in the portrait who'd taught him that mercy was weakness, who'd spent his life accumulating power and died alone, hated by everyone including his son. Maybe weakness was underrated. Cedric returned to the room. Marcus had positioned himself by the fire, comfortable as a visiting friend. His guards had moved closer to Evelyn, surrounding her subtly, not threatening overtly, just establishing control. "Everything settled?" Marcus asked pleasantly. "Not quite." Cedric addressed his own guards. "Take positions outside, make sure we're not disturbed." "Your Grace," one of them protested, "leaving you alone with—" "That's an order." The men hesitated, then obeyed. Discipline trumped concern. They filed out, leaving Cedric, Marcus, Evelyn, and 3 of Marcus's guards in the room. The odds had gotten worse. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice. Sending away your protection." "I don't need protection in my own castle." "Don't you?" Marcus gestured to his men. "Because I'm looking at a situation where you're significantly outnumbered. If you wanted me dead, I'd be dead already. So let's skip the posturing. What does Lucian really want?" Marcus's smile faded. "He wants the problem solved, permanently. This girl is a complication the kingdom can't afford. She's a person. She's a symbol. And symbols are dangerous when they represent dead dynasties. People start getting ideas, wondering if the current government is legitimate, questioning authority." Marcus moved closer to Cedric, lowering his voice. "You were there that night, weren't you? At the palace fire." The question hit like a fist. Cedric kept his expression neutral. "I was a commander. We responded to the blaze." "No, you were there before the fire started. I've seen reports. You were in the palace on security detail, which means you saw things, maybe even know things about how it started. I know the royal family died. That's all anyone needs to know." Marcus studied him, reading between words. "You're protecting someone, or protecting yourself. Either way, bringing this girl back into the light exposes secrets. Secrets that get people killed. Is she really worth dying for?" Cedric looked at Evelyn. She sat on the bed now, watching them with those storm-colored eyes, listening to men decide her fate like she wasn't even present, like she was property to be negotiated over. "She's worth not being a coward for," Cedric said quietly. "Noble sentiment. Wrong calculation." Marcus turned to his guards. "Bind her hands. We're leaving in 10 minutes." The guards moved. Evelyn stood quickly, backing toward the wall. One of them grabbed her arm and she twisted, bringing her knee up hard into his stomach. The man gasped and doubled over. The other 2 guards rushed her. "Stop!" Cedric's voice cracked like a whip. They froze. Marcus looked irritated. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "The girl comes with me. That's not negotiable. Fight it and people die. Accept it and you live to see tomorrow. Those are your options. There's always a third option." "Really?" "Show me." The door opened. Garrett entered with Captain Helena Crane. Helena was older than Cedric remembered, her hair gone white, her face lined with decades of hard living. But her eyes were sharp, soldier's eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. She wore simple traveling clothes, but carried herself with military precision. She looked at Evelyn and stopped breathing. The reaction was instant, visceral. Recognition flashed across Helena's face before she could control it. Not recognition of a stranger. Recognition of someone known. Someone impossible. Marcus saw it too. His expression shifted, calculations racing behind his eyes. "Captain Crane," he said smoothly, "thank you for coming. I trust you received the Chancellor's message?" Helena's jaw tightened. "I received it, and you understand the terms?" "I understand that my family dies if I tell the truth." "Yes, crystal clear." Marcus frowned. "Captain, I need you to look at this girl carefully. Have you ever seen her before?" Helena moved closer, her movements stiff. She studied Evelyn's face, her hands, the way she held herself. Cedric watched the captain's eyes, saw the war happening behind them. Duty versus conscience, family versus truth. When Helena spoke, her voice was steady. "I've never seen this girl before in my life." The lie landed perfectly. Too perfectly. Marcus's frown deepened. "You're certain?" "Completely. She looks nothing like Princess Catherine. Wrong eyes, wrong bone structure, wrong everything. This is clearly a fraud." Evelyn made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Cedric wanted to tell her to stay silent, but the damage was done. Helena had condemned her with professional efficiency. Marcus studied Helena, suspicion plain on his face. "Captain, lying to protect the Duke is treason. The same penalty applies to you as to him." "I'm not lying." Helena met his eyes without flinching. "I served Princess Catherine for 3 years. I dressed her, trained her, watched her grow. I know her face better than my own children's. This girl is not her." "Then explain your reaction when you walked in. You recognize something." "I recognize desperation." Helena's voice turned cold. "This girl is playing a part, wearing a stolen pendant, hoping someone will believe her because the alternative is starvation. I've seen it before. Desperate people do desperate things." Marcus didn't look convinced, but he didn't have leverage. Helena had given her testimony, publicly denying the girl's identity in front of witnesses. That was enough for the official record, but it wouldn't be enough for Marcus, or for Lucien. "Fine," Marcus said slowly. "If the captain says she's a fraud, then she's a fraud, which means she's guilty of impersonating royalty, theft of royal property, and conspiracy. All capital crimes." He gestured to his guards. "Bind her. We'll try her in the capital." "No trial," Cedric said. "You'll kill her the moment you leave my lands. Trials are for people with rights. Frauds get rope. Then she stays here until proper authorities arrive. I am proper authority. You're an assassin with a fancy title." Cedric's hand moved to his belt again, muscle memory searching for a weapon that wasn't there. "She doesn't leave this castle." Marcus sighed like he was dealing with a stubborn child. "Then I suppose we do this the hard way?" He nodded to his guards. They drew swords. Cedric's men burst through the door, crossbows raised. Marcus's guards spun, their blades catching firelight. For one frozen moment, everyone stood armed and ready, waiting for the first move that would turn the room into an abattoir. Nobody moved. "This is madness," Marcus said quietly. "You're outnumbered, outmatched, and even if you kill all of us, the Chancellor will send armies. You can't win, Cedric. Probably not. But I can make you bleed first. Is she worth it? All these lives? Your life? Cedric looked at Eveline one more time, saw the fear in her face, the resignation. She thought she was about to die. Thought he'd fold like everyone else in her life had folded. That she'd be abandoned again. Something in Cedric's chest cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice under pressure, spiderwebbing but not shattering. He'd spent 20 years building walls around himself, protecting himself from feeling anything that might compromise his survival. And this impossible girl had fractured those walls in less than a week. Maybe that's what redemption felt like. Not triumph, just the slow, painful recognition that you'd been wrong, and it was going to cost you everything to be right. She's worth not being what I was, Cedric said quietly. And that's enough. Marcus's face hardened. Then you've chosen death. For yourself and everyone here. I've chosen honesty. Death is your department. Marcus raised his hand to signal the attack. Helena moved first. The old captain grabbed one of Marcus's guards from behind, her arm wrapping around his throat in a chokehold perfected over 30 years of military service. The man struggled, but Helena's grip was iron. He went limp in seconds. The room exploded into motion. Cedric's crossbowmen fired. Two of Marcus's guards went down, bolts in their chests before they could react. The third lunged at Cedric, sword raised. Cedric dodged sideways, grabbed the man's wrist, and slammed it against the stone wall. Bones cracked. The sword clattered to the floor. Marcus drew his own blade, moving toward Eveline. She scrambled backward, but he was faster. His hand closed on her arm, yanking her forward. Helena kicked his knee. The joint buckled and Marcus stumbled. Eveline tore free, running for the door. "Get her out!" Cedric shouted. Garrett appeared, grabbing Eveline's hand and pulling her into the corridor. They disappeared into the castle's maze of passages. Safe for now. Maybe. Marcus recovered, his face twisted with rage. He swung at Helena. She blocked with her forearm, wincing at the impact, and drove her fist into his solar plexus. Air exploded from his lungs. Cedric picked up the fallen sword. It felt wrong in his hand, too light, balanced for a smaller fighter. But it was steel, and steel meant options. "You've just declared war," Marcus gasped, doubled over but still functional. "The Chancellor will burn this castle to the ground." "Let him try." More footsteps in the corridor, heavy boots, lots of them. Marcus's remaining guards, drawn by the sounds of combat. They'd be here in seconds, and Cedric's men, outnumbered in his own castle because he'd cut staff 2 days ago. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't fatal. Helena moved to Cedric's side, breathing hard. That bought us maybe 2 minutes. Then they breached the door and were done. 2 minutes is enough to run. I'm too old to run. Then we fight. She smiled, grim and tired, just like old times. They never served together, but the lie felt true. Soldiers understood each other in ways civilians never could. The acceptance of death, the commitment to stand even when standing, was suicide. The door burst open. 6 guards poured in, swords drawn. Cedric raised his blade, felt the weight of it, the promise of violence. Felt something else too. Clarity. For the first time in 20 years, he knew exactly what he was supposed to do. Not the smart thing, not the political thing, the right thing. The guards charged. Metal rang against metal. Cedric blocked, parried, his body remembering training from decades ago. He wasn't fast anymore. Wasn't young. But he was desperate, and desperation made cowards into fighters. Helena moved beside him, her blade a silver blur. She cut one guard's leg, spun, deflected another's strike. 2 against 6. Mathematics that ended one way. But they fought anyway. Because sometimes mathematics lied. Sometimes the equation balanced differently than expected. Sometimes pain exploded in Cedric's side. He looked down, saw the blade buried in his ribs, felt heat spreading, blood soaking his shirt. The guard twisted the sword and Cedric gasped, dropping to one knee. Helena screamed, cutting the man down. But more replaced him. Always more. Cedric's vision blurred. He tried to stand, couldn't. His body wasn't responding anymore. The floor rushed up to meet him. He hit stone, tasted blood. Through dimming eyes, he saw Marcus approaching, limping but alive. Saw the man's face, victorious and cruel. "Where's the girl?" Marcus demanded. Cedric smiled through red-stained teeth. "Far from you." Marcus kicked him. Ribs cracked. Pain whited out thought. You're dying, Cedric. Tell me where she went and I'll make it quick. Cedric coughed blood, quick or slow, still dead. Marcus raised his sword. Last chance. Cedric closed his eyes. Thought of Evelyn running through dark corridors. Hoped Garrett got her to the passage. Hoped she made it to the wine cellar, to the tunnels beyond, to the mountains where winter would hide her tracks. Hoped she survived. The sword fell. Steel bit into flesh. Cedric waited for darkness. It didn't come. He opened his eyes. Marcus stood frozen, his sword raised but not falling. Because another blade had appeared through his chest, the point jutting out below his sternum, blood dripping onto Cedric's face. Marcus looked down, confused. Tried to speak. Blood came out instead of words. The blade withdrew. Marcus collapsed. Behind him stood Garrett, holding a bloody sword with shaking hands. The old steward looked at the corpse, at the blood, at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. I've never killed a man before, Garrett said quietly. Cedric tried to laugh. Came out as a wheeze. Good timing to start. The remaining guards stared at Marcus's body. Leaderless, uncertain. One made a decision and ran. The others followed, disappearing into the castle. Helena knelt beside Cedric, her hands pressing against his wound. You're bleeding bad. We need to get you to the surgeon. No surgeon. Cedric grabbed her wrist. Get Evelyn! Get her out of the kingdom, far as you can. You're dying. I know. That's why you need to listen. There's gold hidden in the North Tower. Enough to buy passage on a merchant ship. Take her across the sea. Give her a life. I can't just... You can. You will. Helena, you recognized her. I saw it. You know who she is. The captain's face crumpled. Yes. Then save her. Like I couldn't. Helena nodded, tears cutting tracks through the blood on her face. I will. I swear it. Cedric's vision was fading, the room growing dark at the edges. He thought he should feel scared, should feel regret. Instead, he felt something close to peace. He'd spent 20 years running from guilt, and in the end, it had caught him anyway. But he'd made it right. Or started to. That had to count for something. Garrett, he whispered. The captain's voice came from far away now. Yes, Your Grace, I'm sorry. For being a coward. For all of it. You were never a coward, sir. You were careful. There's a difference. Not enough of one. Darkness closed in. Cedric felt himself slipping, the world going soft and distant. Voices echoed meaningless sounds. He tried to hold on, to stay present, but his grip was failing. His last thought was of a child he'd carried through fire 18 years ago, hoping she'd forgive him, knowing she probably wouldn't. Then nothing. It. Evelyn ran through corridors she didn't know, following Garrett through darkness lit only by scattered torches. Behind them, sounds of fighting echoed, steel on steel, screaming, the wet sounds of bodies hitting stone. She wanted to go back, to help Cedric, to stand with the man who'd finally chosen not to abandon her. But Garrett pulled her forward, relentless. No time, no choices, just survival. They reached a library, empty and cold. Garrett shoved aside a bookcase, revealing a passage behind. Darkness yawned. In, he ordered. What about Cedric? He's buying you time. Don't waste it. Evelyn hesitated at the threshold. Everything in her screamed to run back, to fight, to do something other than hide again. She'd spent her entire life running. 18 years of being afraid, being small, being nothing. But Garrett was right. Going back meant dying. And dying meant Cedric's sacrifice was for nothing. She stepped into the passage. Garrett followed, pulling the bookcase shut behind them. Darkness swallowed everything. She heard his breathing, harsh and fast, heard her own heart hammering. They stood in silence, listening, waiting. Footsteps overhead, shouts, the sounds of searching. Then quiet. Too quiet. Are they gone? Evelyn whispered. I don't know. They waited longer. Minutes that felt like hours. Evelyn's legs ached from standing still. Her hands were shaking, adrenaline crashing. Finally, Garrett spoke. We need to move. There's a tunnel at the bottom of these stairs, leads to the valley. From there you can reach the mountain pass. We? I'm not coming with you. Garrett's voice was gentle in the dark. I need to stay. Protect what's left of the household. But Helena will meet you at the valley entrance. She'll get you out of the kingdom. Cedric is dead or dying, and if he's alive, he'll want you gone. That was his last order. Get you out. The words hit like blows. Dead or dying. The Duke who'd finally stood for something, who'd finally chosen right over survival, was gone. And she'd never gotten to thank him, never gotten to tell him that she understood, that she forgave him for 18 years ago because he'd redeemed himself tonight. Garrett pressed something into her hand. Heavy. Leather pouch. Gold, he said. Enough for passage, and then some. Helena knows people. Trust her. I don't even know her. Cedric did. That's enough. Evelyn gripped the pouch, feeling coins shift inside. Blood money. Freedom bought with the Duke's life. Why? She asked. Why did he do it? Why sacrifice everything for me? Because you gave him a chance to be who he should have been. And men like Cedric, they live their whole lives waiting for that chance. When it comes, they take it, even if it kills them. Garrett's hand found her shoulder in the darkness. Go now. Don't stop. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't let his sacrifice be for nothing. He pushed her gently toward the stairs. She descended, blind, one hand on the cold stone wall, down and down, into earth that smelled like wine and age and secrets. Behind her she heard the bookcase scrape open, heard Garrett's footsteps retreating, then nothing. She was alone again, but this time she carried something she'd never had before. Proof that someone had stood for her, that her life was worth fighting for, worth dying for. It didn't feel like victory, it felt like drowning. Evelyn reached the bottom of the stairs and found the tunnel. Narrow, cramped, but navigable. She crawled through darkness, the gold pouch heavy against her chest, moving forward because stopping meant breaking. Time lost meaning, could have been minutes or hours. Finally she saw light ahead. Gray and cold, dawn light. She emerged into a snow-covered valley. Wind cut through her thin clothes, stealing breath. Behind her, in the distance, Ravenshire Castle stood dark against the mountains. No lights, no movement, like a tomb. Captain Helena appeared from behind a rock outcropping, wrapped in a heavy cloak. She took one look at Evelyn and knew everything that mattered. He's dead, isn't he? Evelyn asked. Helena nodded once. They both are. Cedric and Marcus. The castle's a massacre. Evelyn felt something inside her chest crack. Not break. Crack. The same way Cedric's walls had cracked when he'd chosen to stand. The same way everything cracked before it shattered completely. What do we do now? Helena handed her a cloak. Now we run, and we don't stop running until you're far enough away that the Chancellor's reach can't find you. And then you survive. Because a lot of good people just died to give you that chance. Don't waste it. Evelyn wrapped the cloak around herself, feeling the weight of obligation settle on her shoulders. Cedric had died for her. Garrett had sent her away to protect her. Helena was risking everything to save her. She hadn't asked for any of it, but she had it anyway. And now she had to decide what to do with a life purchased in blood. They walked into the mountains as dawn broke over Ravenshire. Behind them, smoke began to rise from the castle. Someone was burning evidence, destroying proof, erasing the night from history. But Evelyn remembered, would always remember, the Duke who'd saved her twice, the steward who'd been braver than soldiers, the captain who'd lied to protect her. She remembered. And one day, when she was strong enough, when she was ready, she'd come back. Not as a victim, not as a ghost, as something else entirely. The pendant bounced against her chest with each step, the royal crest catching morning light, the symbol of a dead dynasty, the mark of a lost princess. Evelyn touched it once, feeling the engraved initials, the hidden sigil. Then she let it fall and kept walking. Behind her, Ravenshire burned. Pain dragged Cedric back to consciousness, like hooks in flesh. Every breath felt like drowning. His side burned where the blade had gone in, the wound still seeping despite crude bandaging. Someone had moved him. He was no longer in Evelyn's room, but somewhere darker, colder. Stone walls pressed close. The wine cellar, maybe. Or one of the old storage chambers beneath the castle. He tried to move and his body screamed refusal. Ribs broken, blood loss severe. The kind of injuries that ended soldiers during the war. The ones who died slow over days while surgeons shook their heads and offered nothing but false comfort. "You're awake," Garrett's voice came from the shadows. The steward moved into what little light existed, his face haggard. "I wasn't sure you'd make it." Cedric's throat was desert dry. His voice came out as gravel. "How long?" 3 hours since the fight. Maybe 4. Hard to track time down here. "Evelyn?" "Gone. Helena took her through the mountain pass before dawn. They're beyond the Chancellor's reach by now." Garrett paused. "You succeeded, Your Grace. She's safe. Safe." The word should have brought relief. Instead, Cedric felt only the crushing weight of cost. He'd thrown away 20 years of careful neutrality, destroyed his house's standing, gotten good men killed. All for a girl who might or might not be a dead princess. And he'd do it again. That realization was the strangest part. Lying broken in a cellar, dying from wounds earned protecting someone he barely knew, Cedric felt more alive than he had in decades, like waking from a long sleep, like finally remembering what mattered. "Marcus?" he asked. "Dead. You saw that." Garrett's voice carried no satisfaction, just exhaustion. "I killed him. First man I've ever killed, last 2 probably. His men? Scattered when their leader fell. Some fled the castle entirely. Others are holed up in the East Wing. They know they're trapped. Come morning, they'll either surrender or try to fight their way out. What about our people? We lost 4. 2 guards, a cook, a stable hand. Marcus's men didn't discriminate when the fighting spread." Garrett's hands trembled slightly. "This is a disaster, Your Grace. When word reaches the capital, let it reach." Cedric tried to sit up, failed. His vision grayed at the edges. "We're past the point of containment now. The Chancellor knows what happened, knows we killed his enforcer. He'll come with everything he has. Then we need to run. Tonight. I can get you to the coast, find a ship." "No. Your Grace, staying is suicide. Running is worse." Cedric finally managed to prop himself against the wall, breathing hard from the effort. "If I run, Lucian wins the narrative. Tells everyone I was harboring a traitor, killed his representative, fled like a criminal. My name becomes mud. My family's legacy destroyed. Everyone who served me becomes complicit in treason. Better complicit than dead." "Is it?" Cedric met his steward's eyes. "Garrett, you've served this house 40 years. Your father served before you. Your grandfather before that. 3 generations of loyalty. You think I'm going to repay that by making you a fugitive? I think you're too injured to think clearly. Maybe. But even clouded judgment recognized truth. Running meant admitting guilt. Staying meant forcing Lucian to come to him, to fight on Cedric's ground, where the Duke controlled the terrain and the story. It was still suicide. Just suicide with better optics. "How many men do we have left?" Cedric asked. 23 able bodies if we count servants. 15 actual fighters. Against how many when the Chancellor arrives? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Garrett's voice was flat. "We can't win this militarily. Then we win it politically. There's no politics in this. You killed Marcus Blackwood. That's a declaration of war. It's a statement of principle." Cedric's side throbbed with each word, but he pushed through. "And principles have power if you're willing to die for them. We document everything. Write down exactly what happened. Marcus arrived with forged warrants, threatened an innocent girl, attacked when we resisted. We defended ourselves. Self-defense isn't treason. Lucien will say you were harboring a fraud. Let him prove it. The girl's gone. No witness, no evidence, no case. Just his word against mine. Your word won't matter when you're dead. Then make sure the word survives me." Cedric grabbed Garrett's wrist, grip weak but urgent. "Send riders. Multiple copies of our testimony to every major house, every merchant guild, every noble who's ever questioned Lucian's authority. Flood the kingdom with our version before he can spin his own. That'll take time we don't have. Then work fast. And Garrett? Include everything. The fire 18 years ago. How convenient the royal family died. How Lucien seized power immediately after. Let people start asking questions about that night." The steward's eyes widened. "That's playing with fire yourself. We're already burning. Might as well light the whole damn thing." Garrett nodded slowly, understanding, settling. "You want to drag Lucian down with you. I want him to pay for 18 years of murder and lies. If I'm dying anyway, I'm taking his reputation with me. It was spite dressed up as justice. Revenge wearing the mask of righteousness. But Cedric had stopped caring about the difference. He'd spent 2 decades being reasonable, being political, playing the game. It had gotten him nowhere except a knife in the ribs and a castle full of corpses. Time to stop playing. Footsteps echoed from the corridor above. Running, urgent. One of the remaining guards appeared at the cellar entrance, his face pale with panic. "Your Grace, we have a problem. Another one?" Cedric's laugh turned into a cough that tasted like blood. Riders approaching from the north, at least 50, maybe more. Flying the Chancellor's colors. Cedric and Garrett exchanged looks. 50 men arriving mere hours after Marcus's death meant one thing. Lucien had planned this, sent reinforcements before Marcus even attacked, anticipating either success or failure. Either way, the Chancellor won. If Marcus succeeded in capturing Evelyn, the reinforcements would transport her to the capital. If Marcus failed, they'd execute everyone involved and burn the evidence. Elegant. Efficient. Exactly the kind of ruthless strategy that kept Lucien in power for nearly 2 decades. "How long until they arrive?" Cedric asked. "An hour. Maybe less if they push hard." Garrett turned to Cedric. "We need to move you, somewhere more defensible." "There is nowhere more defensible. This castle's designed to keep enemies out, not withstand siege from within." Cedric tried to stand, couldn't. His legs wouldn't support his weight. "Help me up." "You're in no condition." "Help me up or I'll do it myself and make it worse." Garrett and the guard lifted Cedric between them, supporting his weight. Every movement was agony, his side screaming protest, blood soaked through fresh bandages. He was dying. Had been dying since Marcus's guard stabbed him. The question was whether he'd die in a cellar like a rat or standing where people could see him. Pride had always been his weakness. Might as well lean into it. They climbed stairs that felt like mountains. The castle had gone silent, servants and guards huddled in corners, waiting for whatever came next. Some watched Cedric with fear. Others with something closer to pity. None with hope. They knew what 50 soldiers meant, knew this was the end. Cedric wanted to tell them to run, save themselves, flee before the Chancellor's men arrived. But he understood human nature well enough to know most wouldn't. Loyalty was a chain that bound people even when freedom meant survival. They'd stay because leaving felt like betrayal. They'd die because honor demanded it. That made him the biggest bastard in the kingdom, leading good people to slaughter because he'd finally grown a conscience. They reached the main hall. Someone had lit torches along the walls, casting everything in flickering shadows. Bodies still lay where they'd fallen during the fight. Marcus's guards, Cedric's men, all cooling in pools of spreading blood. Nobody had time to move them. Nobody had energy to care. Cedric stood in the center of the hall, swaying but upright. His legs trembled from effort. His vision blurred at the edges. But he was standing. That counted for something. "Gather everyone," he told Garrett. "Anyone still alive and breathing, bring them here. Your Grace, you need rest." "I need witnesses. Do it." The steward left. Cedric waited, using the time to breathe through pain to force his mind into clarity despite blood loss and shock. He needed words, the right ones. Words that would give meaning to this disaster. That would make his people understand why they were about to die for a girl most of them never met. He'd been a soldier once. Before politics, before nobility, before 20 years of compromise eroded his spine. He'd known how to lead men into impossible situations and make them believe victory was possible, even when mathematics said otherwise. He needed to remember that skill now. Needed to become that man again for one final hour. People trickled in. Guards first, weapons drawn, eyes haunted. Then servants, kitchen staff, stable hands, everyone who'd stayed when they could have fled. 23 souls, just like Garrett said. 23 lives Cedric was about to spend purchasing something he couldn't even name. They formed a rough circle around him, waiting. The injured Duke bleeding into expensive carpet while enemy soldiers rode closer with every passing moment. Cedric met their eyes, one by one. Saw fear there, resignation, but also curiosity. They wanted to know why. Why this girl mattered enough to throw away everything. "Fair question. You all know what's coming," Cedric began. His voice carried, despite weakness, trained projection from years of military command. "The Chancellor's men will be here within the hour. They'll demand our surrender. Demand we hand over everyone involved in Marcus Blackwood's death. And when we refuse, because we will refuse, they'll take the castle by force. Someone in the back shifted nervously. A young guard, barely 20. Kid should have been farming somewhere, not dying in a noble's war. You're wondering why, Cedric continued, why I'm asking you to stand and die for a girl you don't know. Why I threw away peace for a vagrant with a pendant and impossible claims. The question felt heavier than his injuries. And here's the truth. I don't have a good answer, nothing that'll satisfy you or make this fair. The silence stretched. People exchanged glances, confusion rippling through the group. What I can tell you is this. Cedric paused, gathering strength. 18 years ago, something evil happened in the capital. The royal family burned. Good people died. And men like Lucien Vale seized power in the chaos. Since then, we've all lived under his rule. Quiet, obedient, telling ourselves that stability matters more than justice, that surviving is enough. He shifted weight, wincing as his side protested. But it's not enough. Survival without honor is just slow death. And I've been dying slowly for 2 decades because I chose safety over what was right. That girl who was here, that vagrant, she gave me a chance to stop dying, to stand for something real. So I stood. A guard spoke up, older man with scar tissue across his cheek. And now we all die for your redemption? Yes. Cedric didn't soften it. That's exactly what's happening. I'm spending your lives buying my conscience. It's unfair, it's selfish. And I'm doing it anyway because I'm out of better options. The honesty landed like a slap. People recoiled slightly, not expecting that level of bluntness from nobility. Cedric had learned during the war that soldiers preferred harsh truth over comfortable lies. At least truth gave them something solid to stand on. But here's what else is true, he continued. Every one of you can leave right now, walk out those gates, head into the mountains, disappear before the Chancellor's men arrive. I won't stop you, won't blame you. You didn't ask for this fight. It's not yours to die for. Nobody moved. They stood frozen, weighing options. Cedric could see the calculation in their eyes. Survival versus loyalty. Personal safety versus collective honor. Then the scared young guard in the back spoke up. His voice cracked but carried. What happens if we run? You live. Cedric kept his voice level. Probably. The Chancellor might hunt you for a while, but you're small fish. Eventually he'll give up, focus on bigger threats. You could build new lives somewhere quiet. And if we stay, we all die. But we die having done something that matters. We die standing between a girl and the people who want her dead. We die proving that not everyone in this kingdom is a coward. The young guard swallowed hard. Does it matter? One girl against an empire? I don't know. Cedric's side throbbed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're just spitting into the wind. But I've spent 20 years mattering in all the wrong ways. Being important, being respected, being safe. And none of it filled the hole in my chest. So yeah, maybe dying for one girl is stupid. But it's the first honest thing I've done since I walked away from fire 18 years ago. The hall fell silent. Outside, wind howled against stone. The storm was building, winter flexing its power. Snow would be falling soon. Perfect weather for dying. The old guard with the scarred cheek stepped forward. I'll stay. Another voice joined his. A woman from the kitchens. Me too. Then the young guard, his voice steadier now. If we're dying anyway, might as well die, meaning it. One by one, they committed. Not all of them. 3 servants slipped away, heading for the gates, choosing survival. Cedric didn't stop them. Survival was the smart choice, the sane choice, but 20 people stayed, 20 fools who'd rather die with purpose than live with shame. Cedric felt something break inside his chest. Not his body, though that was breaking too. Something deeper. The last wall he'd built around his humanity crumbled, and behind it was grief and pride and terrible love for these people who'd chosen to stand with him. Then we make them pay for every inch, he said roughly. We make the Chancellor's men remember that Ravenshire doesn't fall quietly. We make Lucien Vale regret sending his dogs to our gates. The guards began checking weapons, tightening armor. Servants gathered improvised weapons, kitchen knives, iron pokers, anything with an edge. They moved with grim efficiency, understanding that preparation was just ritual. 20 people couldn't hold a castle against 50 trained soldiers. But ritual mattered. Going through the motions kept panic at bay, kept people functional when terror threatened to freeze them. Garrett appeared at Cedric's side. The riders I sent out are gone. Your testimony is on its way to every major house in the kingdom. Whatever happens here, the truth survives. Thank you. For what? Getting you killed? For standing with me when it mattered? Cedric gripped his steward's shoulder. You've been more than loyal, Garrett. You've been family. The old man's eyes glistened. Family doesn't let family die alone. They stood together in the hall, surrounded by doomed people, making final preparations. Cedric thought about all the ways this could have gone differently, all the choices that led here. If he'd just turned Evelyn away that first night, if he'd handed her to Marcus without fighting, if he'd run when the Chancellor's reinforcements were spotted. So many off-ramps, so many chances to choose survival over principle. And he'd taken none of them. That realization brought clarity. Cedric had spent his entire adult life being practical, being smart, choosing survival. And where had it gotten him? A castle full of ghosts, a reputation built on cowardice, and a soul that felt like empty corridors. At least tonight he'd chosen differently. At least he'd finally stood for something worth dying for. The cost was catastrophic, but the alternative, living another 20 years as a hollow man, was worse. Horns sounded outside. The Chancellor's men had arrived. Cedric moved to the main doors, his people forming ranks behind him. They looked small, vulnerable. 20 souls against an empire's wrath. The mathematics of it should have been crushing. Instead, Cedric felt something like peace. The doors burst open. Wind and snow rushed in, carrying cold that bit through clothes and skin. Framed in the entrance stood Chancellor Lucian Vale himself. Cedric hadn't expected that. Lucian rarely left the capital, preferring to rule from behind walls and proxies. Seeing him here, now, meant this was personal. Meant the old bastard wanted to watch Ravenshire burn. Lucian was tall and thin, all sharp angles and cold eyes. Gray hair swept back from a face that looked carved from ice. He wore expensive traveling clothes and an expression of mild disappointment, like he'd expected better from Cedric. Behind him, soldiers filled the courtyard. Not 50. More like 100. The reports had been wrong. Or Lucien had brought additional forces. Either way, the odds had gotten worse. Duke Ravenshire, Lucian said. His voice was cultured, precise, each word measured like a weapon. You've created quite a mess. Chancellor. Cedric kept his tone neutral despite pain screaming through his side. Didn't expect you to deliver the execution personally. I wouldn't miss it. Lucian stepped inside, snow melting on his shoulders. You killed one of my best men, harbored a fugitive claiming royal blood, incited rebellion against lawful authority. That deserves my personal attention. Marcus attacked first. We defended ourselves. A creative interpretation. Lucien's eyes swept the hall, cataloging bodies, assessing damage. Where's the girl? Gone. Gone where? Far from you. Lucian's smile was cold as the wind outside. You think distance protects her? I have men in every port, every border crossing, every merchant city from here to the coast. She's a dead girl walking. The only question is how long before she realizes it. Let her walk then. You won't find her, perhaps. But I'll find everyone who helped her. Lucian gestured at the people behind Cedric. These servants, these guards, everyone who participated in your little rebellion. They'll die screaming. I'll make sure of it. Threats bore me. Either kill us or leave. Such bravado from a man bleeding out. Lucien moved closer, studying Cedric's injuries. You're dying already. Hours left, maybe less. Why make your people suffer for your mistakes? Because suffering means something. Cedric met the Chancellor's eyes. Unlike your bloodless rule, I've kept this kingdom stable for 18 years. You've kept it terrified. There's a difference. Stability and terror are often the same thing. You were a soldier once, Duke. You should understand that peace requires force. Order requires fear. I give people both. You give them chains and call it safety. Lucian's mask slipped slightly. Anger flickered beneath the cultured exterior. You self-righteous fool! You think your principles matter? You think dying here accomplishes anything? Tomorrow, I'll still rule. Your house will be erased from history, and that girl you protected will be dead in a ditch somewhere. This changes nothing. It changes me." Cedric's voice was quiet but carried weight. And that's enough. For several heartbeats, they stood facing each other. The aging Duke and the ruthless Chancellor. Two men who'd made different choices 20 years ago and lived with the consequences. One had chosen power, the other had chosen survival. Neither felt like victory now. "Last chance," Lucian said. "Surrender. Tell me where the girl went. I'll make your death quick. Your people walk free." "No." "Then you've killed them all. They killed themselves by standing with me, and they'll die better than your soldiers, because we're dying for something real." Lucy's face hardened. "So be it." He turned and walked toward the doors. His soldiers parted, forming ranks, preparing for assault. Cedric watched him go, feeling time compress, feeling the final moments ticking down. This was it. The end of House Ravenshire. The end of 2 centuries of noble history. His father would be rolling in his grave, watching his son throw everything away for sentiment. Let him roll. Cedric was done living for dead men's expectations. Garrett appeared at his side again. "Any last orders, Your Grace?" "Make them work for it. Every room, every corridor. Don't give them anything easy." The steward nodded. "It's been an honor serving you." The honor was mine. They gripped hands once, quick and firm. Then Garrett moved to organize the defense, positioning people in choke points, distributing what little ammunition they had for the crossbows. Cedric watched his people prepare to die. Watched them move with purpose despite knowing how this ended. Watched them choose honor over survival because he'd asked them to. Because they trusted him enough to follow him into darkness. He'd spent his whole life afraid of moments like this. Afraid of responsibility, afraid of leading people to death, afraid of making choices that mattered. Now that the moment was here, standing in it felt easier than running. Outside, Lucian's voice carried through the wind. "You have 1 minute to surrender. After that, we take the castle by force. Anyone still inside dies." 60 seconds. Cedric counted them in his head, feeling each one fall like a hammer blow. His side throbbed with his heartbeat, his vision blurred. His legs shook from effort of staying upright, but he stayed upright. Because falling meant giving up, and he was done giving up. 30 seconds. His people readied weapons. The young guard with the scared voice had found a sword somewhere. He held it like he'd never used one before. Probably hadn't. Kid was about to learn war the hard way. 15 seconds. Cedric thought about Evelyn, hoping she'd made it far enough. Hoping Helena was good as her word. Hoping the gold he'd given them bought passage to somewhere the Chancellor couldn't reach. 10 seconds. He thought about the child he'd carried through fire 18 years ago. The weight of her in his arms, the sound of her crying, the way she'd clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world burning down. 5 seconds. He'd saved her then, abandoned her after, saved her again now. The cycle felt complete. Redemption purchased at maximum cost. 0. Lucien's soldiers charged. The doors exploded inward under the battering ram's impact. Wood splintered. Men poured through the breach, shields raised, swords drawn. They moved with military precision, a killing machine in human form. Cedric's crossbowmen fired. 3 soldiers fell. 4. There were too many. Always too many. They kept coming like a tide of steel and violence. The first wave hit Cedric's line and everything turned to chaos. Steel rang against steel. Men screamed. Blood sprayed across ancient stone. Cedric fought from where he stood, too injured to move much, but still dangerous. A soldier charged him and Cedric sidestepped, his stolen sword opening the man's throat. Another came and Cedric blocked, parried, drove his blade through a gap in armor. Pain exploded with every movement, but he pushed through it. Pain was just information, could be ignored if necessity demanded. Around him his people were dying. The young guard went down with a spear in his chest. The scarred soldier fought 3 men at once before they overwhelmed him. The kitchen woman screamed defiance and took 2 soldiers with her, 20 people against 100. The math was simple and brutal, but they fought. Every single one of them fought like demons. Made the Chancellor's soldiers pay for every step forward. Made them remember that Ravenshire hadn't surrendered. Garrett appeared at Cedric's side, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. They're breaking through the east corridor. We can't hold it. Fall back to the Great Hall. Make them come to us. There's nowhere left to fall back to. Then we die where we stand. They fought side by side, the Duke and his steward, holding the center while soldiers pressed in from all sides. Cedric's sword felt heavy now, his arms leaden. Blood loss was catching up, his vision grayed at the edges. He wouldn't last much longer. None of them would. But they'd made Lucian pay. 30 soldiers dead or wounded, maybe more. The Chancellor's perfect machine had hit Ravenshire and bled for it. That counted for something. A soldier got through Cedric's guard, blade cutting deep into his shoulder. Cedric gasped, stumbled. His sword fell from numb fingers. The soldier raised his weapon for the killing blow. Garrett threw himself between them, taking the blade meant for Cedric. It punched through his chest, emerging bloody from his back. The old steward's eyes went wide with shock. "No!" Cedric caught him as he fell. Garrett looked up, his face already going pale. 40 years, he whispered, worth every moment. Then he was gone. Cedric knelt holding his dead steward, surrounded by soldiers, bleeding from multiple wounds. This was the end. He'd run out of miracles, out of strength, out of time. But he'd stood. Finally stood for something that mattered. The soldiers closed in. Cedric closed his eyes, ready for darkness. Thunder split the sky. Not thunder. Hoofbeats, hundreds of them, coming fast. The soldiers hesitated, turning toward the sound. Through the broken doors, through the snow and wind, riders appeared, dozens of them. Flying banners Cedric didn't recognize at first. Then he saw the crest, a crowned lion and a rose. The royal seal, the old one, from before the fire. And leading them, mounted on a gray warhorse, was Evelyn Ashcroft. She'd come back. The world stopped moving. Cedric knelt in pooling blood, cradling Garrett's body, surrounded by soldiers frozen mid-strike. Everyone stared at the impossible sight, framed in the shattered doorway. Evelyn Ashcroft sat mounted on a warhorse, snow swirling around her like a crown of white fire. Behind her, at least 60 riders carrying the old royal banner, the lion and rose. The symbol everyone thought had died 18 years ago. She'd come back. The girl who was supposed to run, who was supposed to disappear into safety and obscurity, had turned around and ridden straight into the teeth of her enemies. Cedric's mind couldn't process it. The sacrifice he'd made, the deaths he'd caused, all of it predicated on getting her away. And she'd thrown it back in his face by returning. Stupid, suicidal, magnificent. Evelyn dismounted with the grace of someone born to horseback. She wore leather armor, simple but effective, and carried a sword at her hip like she knew how to use it. Her dark hair was pulled back severe, emphasizing the bone structure Marcus had recognized. The gray eyes swept across the carnage, taking in the bodies, the blood, the survivors barely standing. When her gaze found Cedric, something cracked in her expression. Pain, relief, fury all mixed together. "Chancellor Vale," she called out. Her voice carried clear and strong, trained projection that filled the hall. "I believe we have unfinished business." Lucian had frozen like everyone else, but now his mask of control reassembled. He stepped forward, soldiers parting around him. "Who leads this farce?" "You're a vagrant playing dress-up, nothing more. I'm Catherine Elizabeth Ashcroft, daughter of King Edmund and Queen Margaret, heir to the throne you stole, and I've come to take back what's mine." The declaration rang through the hall. Soldiers shifted nervously, uncertain. They'd been told they were suppressing a fraud. Now that fraud stood before them claiming royal blood with 60 armed riders at her back. The narrative was collapsing. "You have no proof," Lucian said. His voice remained calm, but Cedric heard the edge beneath it. No witnesses, no documentation, just a pretty speech and stolen banners. "I have him," Evelyn pointed at Cedric. "Duke Ravenshire was there the night of the fire. He knows the truth. The Duke is a traitor who'll say anything to save his skin. Then I have her." Captain Helena Crane stepped forward from the riders. She'd changed into her old military uniform, the Royal Guard insignia still visible after 18 years. She carried herself like the soldier she'd been, back straight, eyes hard. "I served Princess Catherine for 3 years, dressed her, trained her, protected her. I know her face better than my own reflection." "You testified she was a fraud," Lucian countered. "In this very castle hours ago." "I lied." Helena's voice was steel. "You threatened my family, Told me everyone I loved would die if I confirmed her identity. So I lied to protect them. But I'm done protecting them at the cost of truth. This girl is Catherine Ashcroft. I'd stake my life on it. Then you've just volunteered for execution. So be it. But lying won't change what she is. The soldiers were looking at each other now, whispering, doubt spreading like infection. Cedric watched it happen, watched Lucien's control fracture in real time. The Chancellor had built his power on certainty, on being 3 steps ahead, but Eveline's return had thrown him off balance. He was reacting instead of directing. That was the first crack. It wouldn't be enough. Not yet. Lucien still had numbers, still had authority. One girl with 60 riders couldn't topple an empire, but she could make it bleed. Your Grace, Evelyn said, speaking directly to Cedric, tell them what happened that night. Cedric tried to speak, couldn't. His throat was closed, clogged with blood and exhaustion. He'd lost too much. His body was shutting down, prioritizing survival over speech. Eveline crossed to him, ignoring the soldiers, ignoring Lucien, kneeling in blood and gore to grip his shoulders. Stay with me. Just a little longer. Can't, Cedric managed. His voice was barely a whisper. Done. No. You don't get to die yet. Not before you finish what you started. She turned to one of her riders. Get him water. Now. A young man ran forward with a canteen. Eveline held it to Cedric's lips, forcing him to drink. The water was cold, shocking his system. He coughed, gasped, felt clarity return slightly. Enough to speak if he was fast. The fire, Cedric said. His voice rattled like stones in a jar. Wasn't an accident. Lucien ordered it. Killed the king and queen, tried to kill Catherine. Lies, Lucien snapped. Desperate lies from a dying traitor. I carried her out. Cedric's eyes found the Chancellor across the hall. Saved her. You told me to hide her. Said the kingdom needed stability. So I did. Hid her for 18 years. His gaze shifted to Eveline. I'm sorry. For leaving you. For being a coward. You saved my life, Eveline said quietly. Twice now. That's not cowardice. Should have done more. Should have... He coughed, blood spattering his lips. His vision was graying again, the edges going dark. He was running out of time, out of words, out of everything except the truth he'd buried for 2 decades. Lucien burned the palace, he forced out. Murdered the king, seized power. Everything since then is built on lies and corpses. The kingdom deserves to know. The soldiers were staring at Lucien now. Not with fear, with calculation. They were professional men, loyal to authority, but not blind. If what Cedric said was true, they'd been serving a murderer. That changed things, changed what orders they'd follow. Lucien saw it happening, saw control slipping. His face went cold, calculating. This changes nothing. Even if the girl is Catherine Ashcroft, she has no legal claim. The throne passed to the Aldermere line after the fire. King Leopold rules by legitimate succession. Leopold is your puppet, Helena said. Everyone knows it. He's the lawful king, recognized by every noble house. This girl appearing from nowhere doesn't change legal reality. It changes everything. Eveline stood, leaving Cedric kneeling in blood. She faced Lucien across the hall, 2 people separated by 20 feet and 18 years of lies. You built an empire on my family's corpses. Told the kingdom we were dead. Convenient for you. Profitable too, I'd wager. I saved the kingdom from civil war. Child queens are disasters. History proves it. So you made yourself kingmaker instead. How noble. I made hard choices. Someone had to. And now I'm making one. Eveline drew her sword. It caught firelight, gleaming red and gold. I challenge your authority, your rule, everything you built. Right here. Right now. You can't challenge what you have no legal standing to oppose. Then arrest me. Try me as a fraud. Put me on trial in front of the kingdom. Let's see how that goes when witnesses testify to what really happened. Lucien's jaw tightened. Trials could be manipulated, but not perfectly. Not when too many people knew pieces of truth. A public trial risked exposure, risked questions about the fire, about who benefited from the royal family's death. Lucien had spent 18 years burying those questions. Eveline was threatening to dig them all up. The Chancellor made his choice. He gestured to his soldiers. Kill her. Kill everyone here. No survivors. No witnesses. But the soldiers hesitated. Killing a girl claiming royal blood was different from killing traitors. One was duty, the other was potential regicide. The distinction mattered. That hesitation was everything. One of Lucian's own men, a captain by his insignia, stepped away from formation. "Sir, with respect, we need clarification. If there's legitimate question about the girl's identity, there's no question. She's a fraud. Kill her." The captain didn't move. Neither did his men. They stood frozen between competing loyalties. Follow orders or follow conscience? Obey authority or question it? Cedric watched it happen from his knees, watched Lucian's empire crack wider. Power was strange that way. It looked solid until someone tested it. Then you discovered it was just collective agreement, and agreements could shatter. Evelyn moved toward Lucien. Her riders followed, forming a wedge. Not attacking, just advancing. Steady pressure applied to the fault line. "You have a choice," she told the Chancellor. "Stand down, face trial for what you did, or fight here and guarantee civil war, because even if you kill me, those riders carry my testimony. It's already distributed to every major house. The truth is out. You can't kill it. I can kill you. That's sufficient." "Is it?" "Because I see your soldiers doubting. I see your captains questioning. How long before they realize you're the fraud? That everything you built is just murder dressed up as policy?" Lucian's hand moved to his sword. For the first time since entering the castle, he looked genuinely threatened. Not by Evelyn's army, by her words, by the truth she carried like a weapon sharper than steel. "You're a child playing queen," he said. "You don't understand what ruling requires." "I understand that it shouldn't require burning families alive. That seems like baseline morality. Morality is luxury. Power requires sacrifice." Sacrifice. Evelyn's voice turned bitter. "That's what you call murdering my mother? Burning my father alive? Hunting a child through flames? Sacrifice? Necessary evil. There's no such thing, just evil that people justify." They stood facing each other, the girl and the Chancellor, surrounded by soldiers who didn't know which one to kill. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then one of Lucien's soldiers dropped his weapon. It clattered on stone, impossibly loud. "I'm not killing a child who might be royal blood," the man said. "Court-martial me if you want, I'm out." Another soldier lowered his sword. Then another. It spread like plague through Lucian's ranks. Not all of them. Maybe half. But half was enough. Enough to destroy the appearance of unified force. Enough to prove Lucian's authority wasn't absolute. The Chancellor's face went white with rage. "Traitors. You're all traitors." "We're soldiers," the captain said, "not murderers. And we need better proof before we kill a girl claiming to be our princess. I'll have you all executed." "Maybe. But you'll have to catch us first." The captain turned and walked toward Evelyn's lines. His men followed. Desertion in the face of the enemy, technically. But conscience had limits even military discipline couldn't override. Lucien stood abandoned by half his force, surrounded by hostile soldiers, his control evaporating. For 18 years he'd ruled through fear and certainty. Now he had neither. "Last chance," Evelyn said. "Surrender or die here." Lucian's hand closed on his sword hilt. His eyes went cold. "I've spent 18 years building this kingdom. I won't let a ghost tear it down." He drew steel and charged. Evelyn blocked his first strike, barely. He was fast for an old man trained and vicious. She gave ground, deflecting rather than meeting force with force. Smart. He was stronger. She just needed to survive until he tired. But Lucien didn't tire. He pressed her hard, blade work precise and brutal. She was good. He was better. Age and treachery beating youth and skill. Cedric tried to stand, to help, couldn't. His body had quit responding to commands. He could only watch as the girl he'd saved twice fought for her life against the man who'd tried to kill her at birth. Evelyn stumbled. Lucien's blade opened a cut across her shoulder. She gasped but didn't drop her sword. Backed away, bleeding, trying to create distance. Lucien followed, relentless. He'd kill her and damn the consequences. Dead princesses couldn't testify. Then Helena was there, her blade intercepting Lucien's. The old captain moved with muscle memory from decades past, fighting like she'd never stopped. She and Evelyn fought together, 2 against 1, driving Lucien back. But he was still better, still faster. His blade found gaps, drawing blood from both women. They were losing. One of Eveline's riders charged, then another. They swarmed Lucien, overwhelming him with numbers. He fought brilliantly, cutting down 2 men before a blade found his leg. He stumbled. Another hit his sword arm. His weapon fell. The riders forced him to his knees, bleeding, disarmed, but still defiant. Eveline stood over him, breathing hard. Her shoulder bled, but she ignored it, all her focus on the man who'd killed her family. "Do it," Lucien said. "Kill me. Prove you're just like me. I'm nothing like you. Then show me." His smile was cruel. "Let me live. Put me on trial. Watch your kingdom tear itself apart, arguing over evidence from 18 years ago. Watch nobles who profited from my rule fight to keep the status quo. Watch the whole thing collapse into civil war." He laughed, blood-flecked. "You can't win this. Kill me and you're a tyrant. Spare me and I'll destroy you from prison." "Maybe." Eveline lowered her sword. "But I'd rather be destroyed trying to do right than succeed by doing wrong. That's the difference between us." She turned to the soldiers. "Take him into custody, real custody. Multiple guards, chains. I want him alive for trial." They moved to obey. Lucien didn't resist, but his eyes promised murder. "This isn't over. It is for you." They dragged him away. The hall fell silent except for groaning wounded and the wind outside. The fight was done. Ravenshire had survived. Barely. Eveline moved to Cedric, kneeling again in blood that was mostly his. He looked at her through fading vision and saw the girl he'd carried through fire. Saw the woman she'd become. Strong. Brave. Everything he'd hoped and more. "You came back," he managed. "Stupid." "I know." She was crying, he realized, tears cutting tracks through blood and soot. "But I couldn't let you die alone. Not after everything. Should have run. Should have... Shut up. You're not allowed to die yet. We still have work to do. No work left. Just... He coughed, each breath harder than the last. "Just make it count. Don't let this be for nothing. It won't be. I promise." Cedric's vision was going dark now. Truly dark. The kind that didn't come back. He thought about Garrett, about Helena, about all the people who died buying this moment. Wondered if it was worth it. If one girl's life balanced against dozens. He decided it did. Not because mathematics supported it. Because choosing not to save her would have killed something in him worse than any blade. Would have confirmed that survival mattered more than humanity. That the world was just violence and everyone died alone. At least he'd proved that wrong. At least he'd stood with people who mattered. At least the end came with purpose instead of emptiness. "Thank you," Eveline whispered, "for saving me, for choosing me." Cedric tried to answer, couldn't. The darkness was complete now. He felt her hand in his, felt the press of people gathering close. His people, the ones who'd stayed, the ones who'd stood. Then nothing. Cedric Ravenshire died in a castle hall surrounded by those he'd led to death and the girl he'd saved twice. He died with blood on his hands and purpose in his heart. He died having finally chosen right over survival. Some would say that made him a fool. Others would call him hero. He would have settled for human. 3 months later, Evelyn Ashcroft stood in the throne room of the royal palace. The same room where her parents had ruled, where she'd played as a child before fire consumed everything. It had been rebuilt since then, Lucien's renovations erasing the smoke damage. But traces remained if you knew where to look. Scorch marks on certain stones. Replacement panels that didn't quite match. The past never fully disappeared, just got covered over, waiting. She wore the crown now, light and terrible on her head. They'd found it in storage, the original corona her mother wore. It fit perfectly. Like 18 years had just been waiting for her to grow into it. The coronation had been complicated. Half the noble houses supported her claim, half resisted, either from loyalty to Lucien or fear of change. It took months of negotiation, compromise, and occasional violence to achieve even fragile consensus. She was queen, but her throne sat on uncertain foundation. Lucien's trial had been public and brutal. Evidence piled up, servants who remembered the night of the fire, soldiers who'd carried out orders, financial records showing who profited from the massacre. The man's empire of lies collapsed under scrutiny. They'd executed him 2 weeks ago, quick and professional. No speeches, no final words, just justice delivered cleanly. Evelyn had watched, felt she owed it to her family, to Cedric, to everyone who'd died. But it brought no satisfaction, just exhaustion. Killing Lucien didn't resurrect the dead, didn't repair the damage, just closed one chapter so another could begin. She stood now in the throne room preparing for her first full assembly. Every major house would send representatives. They'd swear loyalty or withdraw it. The kingdom would either accept her rule or fracture into civil war. High stakes. Just another day. Captain Helena Crane entered, now promoted to commander of the Royal Guard. She'd aged another decade in 3 months, stress eating her alive. But she wore the uniform with pride, having reclaimed the position she'd held before the fire. "They're ready for you," she said. Evelyn nodded, checked her appearance in the mirror. The crown sat heavy but straight. The royal robes felt like costumes. Everything about this felt borrowed, like she was playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. But that was the job. Fake it until it became real. She thought about Cedric often. Wondered what he'd say about all this. Probably something cynical about power and corruption. Something about how thrones just taught good people to compromise until they became what they'd fought against. Maybe. But she'd try anyway. Try to be better than what came before. Try to prove that choosing right over survival wasn't just suicide dressed up as principle, though some days the distinction felt thin. "How many are hostile?" she asked Helena. "Maybe a third openly, another third quietly. The rest are waiting to see which way the wind blows. Inspiring loyalty there. You're a girl who appeared from nowhere claiming a dead throne. They need time to trust you, or decide I'm weak enough to challenge." That too. Evelyn smiled despite tension. Helena's honesty was refreshing. Most courtiers lied reflexively, telling her what they thought she wanted to hear. The commander just gave her truth, harsh and unfiltered. "Any word from the provinces?" Evelyn asked. "The eastern duchies are still loyal to the old king. Leopold's in hiding, but he's got support. Could be a problem if he rallies. He's a puppet without a master. Without Lucien, he's harmless. Don't underestimate him. Puppets with broken strings get desperate. Desperate people do stupid things." Noted. "What about Ravenshire?" Helena's expression softened. "The castle's being rebuilt. Your engineers are doing good work. Should be habitable by spring. And the people there? The ones who survived are grateful. You pardoned them, gave them pensions. They're telling anyone who'll listen that you're the rightful queen." "Good. We need their testimony. Cedric's sacrifice means nothing if people forget it. They won't forget." Helena's voice carried weight. He made sure of that. Died making enough noise that everyone heard. That was Cedric. Never did anything quietly. Evelyn felt the familiar ache in her chest, the grief that hadn't faded despite time. She'd only known him for days. Shouldn't hurt this much. But he'd stood for her when no one else would. Had chosen her over survival, over comfort, over everything he'd built. That created debt that couldn't be repaid. "We're establishing a memorial," she said, "at Ravenshire, for everyone who died that night. Cedric, Garrett, all of them. I want their names remembered, already planned. Stonemasons are working on it now." Helena paused. "There's something else. We found letters, Cedric's testimony about the fire. He sent copies to every major house before he died. That's why so many nobles supported your claim. His words carried weight, because he died for them. Dead men's testimonies are hard to ignore. That, and he was respected. Even people who hated him acknowledged his honor. Dying proved he believed what he wrote. Evelyn absorbed that. Cedric had known he was dying, had used his remaining time to build her case, to create the foundation she'd need. He'd given her not just his life, but his reputation, his name, everything he had. That should have been enough. Should have made this feel victorious. Instead, it felt like standing in ruins, trying to build something from ash and broken stone. Possible, maybe, but exhausting. "Time," Helena said gently. "The queen needs to address her assembly." "Right." Evelyn straightened her crown, squared her shoulders, walked toward the throne room doors. They opened onto the great hall where hundreds waited. Noble faces, most of them watching her with suspicion or calculation, a few with open hostility. She'd won the throne. Now came the hard part. Keeping it, proving she deserved it, turning a kingdom built on lies into something honest. Impossible task. But she'd try anyway, because Cedric had died believing she could. and she refused to make that death meaningless. Evelyn Ashcroft, last daughter of a burned dynasty, walked into the throne room and faced her kingdom. The road ahead was uncertain. The odds were poor. The enemies were legion. But she'd survived 18 years in hiding, walked 200 miles through winter, faced down a chancellor who'd murdered her family. She'd stood in fire and refused to burn. This was just one more impossible thing, and she'd learned from the best how to choose right over survival, how to stand when standing meant death, how to be human even when being human cost everything. That was Cedric's gift. Not safety, not comfort, just the stubborn refusal to let fear win. Evelyn took her place on the throne, looked out at hostile faces and calculating eyes, felt the weight of the crown pressing down. Then she began to speak, not about power or authority, about truth, about the night her family died, about the men who'd died protecting her, about the cost of lies and the price of honesty. Some people listened, others scoffed, but she spoke anyway. Because silence meant letting Lucian's version stand. Silence meant everyone died for nothing. So she spoke truth into a room built on lies. Spoke until her voice went hoarse. Spoke until some of the hostile faces softened. Not all, never all, but enough. Enough to start. The assembly ended hours later. Noble houses swore loyalty with varying degrees of sincerity. The kingdom didn't fracture, didn't embrace her either. Just continued, uncertain. Fragile, alive. Evelyn returned to her chambers exhausted. The crown came off first, too heavy to bear another moment. Then the robes. She stood in simple clothes, just a girl again, just Catherine who'd been Evelyn, who'd been nobody. Helena appeared with wine. You did well, I rambled. Lost the thread twice, probably offended half the lords. But you were honest. That counts for something. Does it? Evelyn took the wine, drank deep. Honesty doesn't win wars. No, but it builds foundations wars can't shake. Helena sat across from her, looking old and tired. You asked me once why I lied about recognizing you, why I testified you were a fraud. I know why. Lucien threatened your family. It was more than that. Helena's voice went quiet. I was afraid. Afraid of what you represented. Afraid that confirming your identity would restart the cycle. Fire and blood and everyone dying for power. So I lied. Chose safety over truth. Just like Cedric did 18 years ago. But you came back, both of you. That's what matters. Is it? Helena stared into her wine. We both chose wrong first. Chose survival over principle. Then we reversed course and people died because of it. Cedric, Garrett, dozens of others. Were we right the first time or the second? The second. Evelyn said it with certainty she didn't feel, because choosing wrong and correcting it is better than choosing wrong and standing by it. That's what separates people from monsters. The willingness to change. Cedric would appreciate that philosophy. Probably argue with it too. Helena smiled sadly. He was good at arguing. They sat in silence, two women who'd been broken by the same fire, rebuilt by the same choice. The wine slowly disappeared. Outside, the city settled into night. Somewhere out there, people slept without knowing how close the kingdom had come to burning again. How one girl's survival had changed everything. Or maybe changed nothing. Time would tell. What do we do now? Helena asked. We rebuild. Evelyn set down her empty glass. We take this broken kingdom and make it something worth the price we paid. We honor the dead by being better than those who killed them. Ambitious, necessary. Helena nodded. Then I'm with you. For as long as it takes. Thank you. For everything. For lying when it saved your family. For telling truth when it mattered more. For standing with me. I didn't stand with you. I stood with the girl I failed to protect 18 years ago. This is just delayed duty. Whatever the reason, I'm grateful. They sat together as night deepened. Two survivors planning impossible futures, trying to build kingdoms from ash, trying to prove that choosing right over survival wasn't just pretty suicide. Time would tell if they succeeded, but they'd try. Because Cedric had shown them how, had demonstrated that changing course mattered even when change came too late, that being human meant accepting failure and trying anyway, that death with purpose beat survival without it. Those lessons couldn't die as long as someone remembered them. Evelyn would remember, would carry them forward, would build her rule on the foundation of good people who'd chosen badly and then chosen better. It wouldn't fix everything, wouldn't resurrect the dead or erase the scars, but it might create something new, something that looked like hope if you squinted right. And hope was enough. Had to be. Because the alternative was returning to Lucy Yen's kingdom of fear. And fear had ruled long enough. Time for something different, something honest, something worth dying for. Eveline looked out her window at the sleeping city. Somewhere out there, in a valley to the north, Ravenshire was being rebuilt. Stone by stone. A monument to the man who'd saved her twice, who'd shown her that power meant nothing without humanity, that survival was pointless without purpose. She touched the pendant at her throat, the royal seal, the hidden sigil underneath, CEA, and the sword and rose mark Cedric had carved 18 years ago. A promise that he'd come back for her. He'd kept that promise, just not the way either of them expected. Evelyn closed her eyes and made her own promise. To him, to Garrett, to everyone who'd stood in that hall and died buying her future. I won't waste this. I won't let your sacrifice be for nothing. I'll build something worth the price you paid. I'll be the queen you died believing I could be. Even if it kills me, even if I fail, I'll try. That was all anyone could do. Try. Choose right even when right was impossible. Stand even when standing meant death. Be human even when being human cost everything. Cedric had taught her that. His last gift, the only one that mattered. Evelyn carried it forward into uncertain dawn, into a kingdom that didn't want her, a throne that might collapse, a future that promised nothing but struggle. But she carried it forward anyway. Because the alternative was letting fear win. And fear had ruled long enough. Time for something different. Time for truth. For honor. For all the fragile human things that broke easily but mattered most. Time to be worthy of the people who died so she could try. Evelyn Ashcroft, queen of a broken kingdom, survivor of fire and lies, stood in her chambers and faced the coming dawn. It promised nothing, guaranteed less, but it was hers, and she'd defend it the way Cedric had defended her, with everything she had, until the last breath, until the job was done. That was the burden of the crown, not power, purpose. She wore it the way he'd carried her, carefully, determinedly, knowing it might kill her but refusing to put it down. That was humanity, the stubborn refusal to let darkness win. And darkness had ruled long enough. Dawn was breaking, time to build something in the light.